Sword of Coming Chapter 851. How dare Qin Lingjun pat that person on the shoulder? He was still alive and dead, but the old master had no choice but to give up and let Qin Lingjun take himself out of the town, neither to the gods' graves nor to the Xuanhu temple, but just a detour. The Longshu River, go to the stone arch bridge and finally take a look at the ruins of the small temple similar to the pavilion. Qin Lingjun tentatively asked. The most sacred master, who was the tall Taoist old before, has his realm very high. The old master nodded. It is very high. If the realm is not high, the Taoist ancestor will not teach him the Taoism. Moreover, this Taoist friend in his early years was a great beneficiary to our human race, so the ritual sage was set in line with the earthly branch. In the 12 zodiac signs the ranking is very high. It is the bull temper of fellow Taoist. Forget it, it's not kind to say right and wrong behind. Qin Lingjun was anxious, but listening, it seems to be a bit of a holiday with my master? What to do? I must not be able to beat the old Taoist, and the Holy Master said that he would be guilty in fighting with Taoist ancestors, so no matter how you look at it, I don't take advantage of it. Nonsense, of course he and the most sacred master are in the same camp, and you can't turn your elbows outside. What is called jianghu means that two groups of people are fighting and fighting in groups. Even if the number of people is huge and there are few people on their own side, they are destined to be unable to fight. Earlier the old Taoist mentioned the lotus root flower blessed land. Listen to the tone, his master has suffered and lost face there. Regarding the blessed land that was renamed the lotus root blessed land, Qin Lingjun only knew that Pei Qian and Chao Qingyang, as well as the old cooks and cultivators, all came from this wonderful geomantic land, but they didn't like to talk more about their hometown. Qin Lingjun was too lazy to ask about the matter, so he always mistakenly thought that it was an inferior lotus flower blessed land in the past, and there were not even a few cultivators, and there was no land immortal. What storms could be caused? How could I think of running out of a guy called Taoist friend by the ancestors? It's really not good to look at him. It's because I was kind to others and talked about a lot of grass in the mountains and my own family. Otherwise, this foolish account, my little arm the calf cannot be carried down. The old master shook his head. In fact, in the lotus roots, this Taoist friend recognized your master's life in the world, especially the long way in the heart, and it was just right to relieve people. Qin Lingjun was relieved, straightened his chest and laughed. The elders have always had a good relationship with them. As for me, I have to learn how to do it, but it's okay. The old master smiled and said, I'm not good at this kind of elders. I took my disciples to study the world and met a fisherman, but he couldn't cross the river by boat. Looking back, I was still very energetic at that time. I'm pleased by Dadeo. Qin Lingjun said courageously, my master took Aquarius and they went to the Sui dynasty for a study tour, relying on the mountains and rivers all the way to eat. It was my master and the woodcutter knocking on the door to stay. It was relatively smooth. The old master asked, Jingqing, you have followed Qin Pingan for many years and there are a lot of books on the mountain, so you never read Master Lu's fisherman's article. I don't know the source of the story of court resistance. I once scolded me, the master still has a proud face. Qin Lingjun looked embarrassed and said, I have finished reading all the books for my master. I only know how to practice diligently every day in Luapa Mountain, so I temporarily ignore it. The old master smiled and said, I still have to read more so that I can catch up when I chat with people. Qin Lingjun pecked at the rice, nodded vigorously and said, I am sure I can read and practice properly in the future. Every time I go down the mountain for a stroll, I often go to the Confucian temple in Xuanhuan County to offer incense to the most holy master and kowtow. Qin Lingjun hesitated and asked curiously, can you ask the Buddha's Dharma like? The implication is to ask if your old man can beat the Buddha. The old master said with a smile, it can turn 1,000 worlds into a small dust, and can turn a flower into a world of mountains and rivers. What do you think of Buddhism? Qin Lingjun sighed. He didn't stop his hands and patted the sleeve of the old master subconsciously. It was okay. Anyway, fighting this kind of thing would hurt the peace. It's better to fight less. The old master didn't care about this and asked casually, I have been here for a long time, is there anyone I don't like? Qin Lingjun withdrew his hands in angrily, and simply learned from his master's hands and sleeves, so as not to make similar rude behaviors. After thinking about it, there is nothing really annoying. It's just that the holy master asked, he always has to give an answer. Just pick. There was a relatively unpleasant guy, Ma Kuxuan in Xinghua Lane, who doesn't care about things, is 1,000 miles worse than my master. The old master naturally knows the truth about Jinwu Mountain, but he didn't say whether this young man is good or bad. He just revealed the secret with Qin Lingjun with a smile, and gave an inside story of the old past, The wild world is driving the puppet to move. The old blind man in xuanhuan, who was very disappointed with a few of us, took out a pair of eyeballs and threw them in Haoran and Qingming respectively, saying that he would see us all become like gods before that kind of existence. One of these 2 eyeballs was taken to the land of lotus roots by the master of the old view, and given to the Taoist boy who burned the fire. The rest stayed by Ma Xuanhuan. Old man Yang was in Ma Xuanhuan in his early years. It's not a small bet on the body. The old master said with emotion. At that time the old blind man only talked about his appearance. It was indeed the best. Qin Qing was far worse than him, but both were solid eyes, a tendon and a bad temper. Qin Lingjun remembered something in a hurry. In fact, there are people who hate, but there is nothing to say, a very unreasonable woman, and I am a big man and I can't take her. That's wrong. Pei Qian killed the white goose's woman, and insisted on Pei Qian to lose money to her. Pei Qian finally paid for it. At that time Pei Qian was actually very sad, but at that time the master was traveling abroad and was not at home, so he could only hold back. In fact, Pei Qian just went to the school to study, and he made trouble on the way after class in school. He really likes to chase the white goose, but every time he keeps the rice bran and corn in the pocket of the millet grains, Pei Qian will give a big hand after the trouble is over. With a wave, immediately throw a handful of millet grains in the alleys, which is regarded as a reward to the so-called defeated opponents. The old master nodded. I want to be sad. In the earliest glorious era when 100 schools of thought were contending, the Mahis school was once a prominent scholar in the vast world, and there was also the Yangzhou school who became unknown in later generations. The words of the 2 families once filled the world, so that there was no return to Yangjiguamo. The statement. Then there was an important turning point that later generations did not pay much attention to, that is, the sub-saints invited the saints to return to the Zhongtu Confucian temple from outside the sky to discuss the matter. In the end, the performance of the Confucian temple was to suppress the Yangzhou school and not let the whole world follow the direction of this school. Going forward and afterward is the rise of Yaxing, who accompanies the Confucian temple, and afterward, it is the literary sage who proposes that human nature is evil. In fact, many of the patriarchs of the philosophers of the 100 schools have criticized this very seriously. They think that the saints of rituals are worried about their own avenues. The rules of etiquette are incompatible with the individual freedom advocated by the Yangzhou school. Conflict, they feel that there is indeed an invisible dispute between the order of the world and the freedom of the individual. Therefore many people believe that the saint of rites is selfish, and they agree to the proposal of the saint. The ritual saint, who has never liked to drink, rarely took the initiative to find the most holy master to drink, but when drinking the ritual did not say anything, just drank wine. Of course the old master knows the reason. It is not that the Yangzhou school, which advocates everyone for oneself, is righteous, is not good. If it is not good, it will not become a prominent school in the world. It is very open and thorough in terms of life and death, and it is unique and extremely novelty. Don't be tired of things, don't hurt foreign things, is also excellent. It is not that this school of learning is close to Taoism, but this kind of learning will one day be like a river flooding the world and spreading. Becoming a worldly way will make all the world's people walking on this road, everyone become more and more extreme, and here is the more hidden human heart and divine dispute. The old master asked, Jingqing, what does your master think of the Yangzhou school? Qin Lingjun thought for a while and answered honestly, my master never mentioned it, but I heard from Da Bai Go that it is a kind of chaotic exquisiteness, which is not good. A group of people study this way, it is harmless and elegant, and it can be beneficial. In the world, if everyone is like this, it will be a flash in the pan. If it weren't for Cui Dongshan's nonsense, Qin Lingjun had never heard of Yangzhou school. Qin Lingjun has always thought that Big White Goose is a drunk, the kind of person who can talk about alcohol without drinking. The two of them walked along the Longshu River. On this road, the Holy Master knew everything about themselves. Qin Lingjun walked a little bit. Master, your old man talked to me so much today, you must think I'm a manufacturable, right? The old master smiled and said, what is the truth? Qin Lingjun looked sincere and said, your old man is so busy you are willing to talk to me all the way. The old master answered the wrong question. Every yesterday's self is our biggest backer today. Jingqing, why do you like to drink? Need a reason to like drinking? Right. The most holy master, can I ask your old man a question? Of course can. Who is most afraid of at the wine table? It's the kind of guy who gets his face on drinking. Oh, I really can't help the most holy master. This sentence came to my heart. Qin Lingjun continued to ask tentatively, which sentence is the most annoying? I'm talking about persuading alcohol to hurt your character. I did what you want. Oh, the knowledge of the most sacred master is indeed remarkable. Chen Lingjun admired it from the bottom of his heart and grinned. I didn't expect your old man to be someone who came here. Jingqing, then I ask you, what do you think is poor, just rich and ignorant? The old master looked at the boy in Xingyi who started to dangle his sleeves beside him. Chen Lingjun immediately regained his arms and sleeves and changed his words. For the rich and unkind, the poor and the wicked? The old master smiled. Just say something from your heart. Chen Lingjun breathed a sigh of relief thinking about the individual to death. That is, there is no money in his pocket, so poor that he can't marry a wife, bachelor, find someone to buy wine on credit. No one is willing to borrow money, so poor that it's a face, and this to save face you have to hide as if you can't see the light and then slap it. The last remaining face, which was smashed by a casual foot one day, can only wait until the people are gone and others have finished watching it. So busy that I dare to find a chance to pick it up from the ground. That's it. You only dare to doubt the world, not yourself? The old master nodded and had two answers, especially the latter, which was really unexpected. He smiled and asked, did you figure it out on the wine table? Chen Lingjun was a little embarrassed, raised his sleeves and rubbed his face. How can it be? The wine table is really drunk. I don't know the height of the sky. I am too lazy to follow the master to the mountain, and I like to make excuses for myself and change. I just like to go down the mountain and come to the town to relax. Don't blame me. I said that I'm diligent. I'm just eating on the mountain and drinking down the mountain. Fortunately, the master sees it. In my eyes, he never cares about me. Master doesn't care. Others are embarrassed to take care of me. The most holy master, am really not bragging. We Laotian, no matter who it is, respect the master from the bottom of our hearts. The old master looked up at Luapa Mountain. Except for an uncommon name, there is nothing strange about things. But this is the biggest weirdness. The old master asked, why did Qin Pingan choose Luapashan when he bought the mountain? Chen Lingjun chuckled and said, there is a saying here. I heard Pei Qian secretly say that the old master had two hills at the earliest, one Jinju Mountain. It costs less, just a gold fine copper coin, and another one. It's the Luapa Mountain where our patriarch hall is now. At that time, the master spread out a picture of the situation of the mountain. I don't know the choice. As a result, a bird just passed by and pulled a pile of on the picture. It just fell on. Luapa Mountain haha laughed to death. The old master asked with a smile, does the old town talk about it? Chen Lingjun rubbed his face vigorously before finally holding back a smile. Master Pei Qian, the great disciple of the mountain, is really willing to say anything. The master said that the old man Yao, the master kiln worker, took him into the mountain to find soil. There is a miracle between the mountains and rivers. There is a 3 feet above the head. Anyway, my master believes this the most. But the master also said that, he later speculated that it might be the intention of the national teacher. The old master nodded. Qin Pingan's guess was the truth, and it was indeed the work of Cui Yang. Of course it's not a good idea to say, lo peo, but if you can get a certain word, the meaning will be completely different. The reason why Cui Yang stripped out a heart-pounding Cui Dongshan, in addition to those big plans that have already come to light, actually hides a more interesting means, that is, to use another self, perhaps to use 1 or 2 key words. Opening a certain kind of restriction is like a letter from home, sent to yourself in the years to come, to help remind yourself at what stage, time, point, and what to say and do. Just like Daozu walked out of the Lotus Cave sky this time, left the Qingming world, had talked to himself early. Daozu has different questions and answers with some destined generations who have seen the future but have not yet come to him. The avenue evolves within the cave, carefully deduced, and it is already good. Howren embroidered the tiger. This time I asked the ancestor of the 3 teachers to take a seat. 1 asked and the 3 left. Of course it does not mean that Cui Yang's mind, Taoism, and knowledge are higher than those of the Sanjiao patriarch. It's like the patriarch of the 3 sects has thousands of choices. Cui Yang said that the path he helped choose is the one that he can prove to be the most beneficial to the world. This is the undoubted case. Then 3 of you, to go or not to go. When he reached the stone arch bridge with no hanging swords, the old master stopped and looked down at the river and then raised his head slightly. On the far side of the blue cliff beside the river, where the straw shoe boy and the ponytail girl first met, one entered the water. Fish, a watchman catches fish. How many small fish swim freely in the blue water? A fight for the change of fish and dragon. The world will see the eternal dragon gate again, and the purple, gold and white scales are leaping. Chen Lingjun sat on the side of the bridge with his feet hanging in the air, arms around his chest, and raised his head and asked, the most holy master, your old man used to be on the side of Mud Bottle Alley. What did you look into the house? After holding his hands in his hands, the old master smiled and said, in order to survive, a poor hungry child dried the fish and ate all of it, without any leftovers, and ate it cleanly and quietly. A helpless child in Niping Alley first learned how to cook medicine from a fellow at the drugstore, and then learned how to go up and down the water from Lu Xianying, and then learned the craftsmanship of porcelain from the old man Yao in Long Yao, and practiced fist recognition from the fist book. After he left his hometown, he still looked at the world carefully, constantly learning how to behave in the world, learning as many skills as possible, every kind of recognition from the heart, every time careful self-certification and cultivating the heart are both a kind of silent growth, while at the same time, do everything possible to continuously give back to the world. The young Qin Pingan once told people that he would learn everything that is good. In the end, even Wu Shuangjiang and Jing Zhezhong's art of dismantling everything in human hearts, and the young hermits of the age of confidence, are still learning. Presumably Qin Pingan will still be like this in the future. The old master looked at the river and asked, the term world is the earliest Buddhist language. Realm if it is based on our master's explanation of words? Qin Lingjun cried and said, Holy Master, don't look at me anymore, I definitely don't know. The old master pointed his finger at the ridge by the river and said with a smile, the field is also a place where weeds are planted, and a paradigm of vertical and horizontal rows of rice paddies. The old scholar once said that people are born with desires, and desires are not allowed. But there is no measure of demarcation you have to argue. Listen, is it a very clear context? So the final conclusion is that human nature is evil, which is caused by etiquette. The knowledge of old scholars is still very real. And you are the saint of rights, are you happy? Qin Lingjun was ashamed. The most holy master, I have read less, so I'm sorry to ask why I don't understand. It's okay. Books don't have long legs. There will be opportunities to read in the future. Don't read the books for nothing. The old master patted the boy in Xingyi on the head. After comforting him, he also exhorted him, if the road is not far away, don't eat for nothing. Qin Lingjun is ignorant, don't care, remember to talk after listening. The old master said with Yenyu, Jingqing, you can go on your own, don't help lead the way. Qin Lingjun courageously asked, should I go to Qilong Alley for a drink? My master is not at home, I can help him drink a few more bowls. The old master shook his head and said with a smile, drinking now is nothing like talking. Don't behave when you get a bargain. This is a good habit. Don't worry, it's not about you but about our Confucianism. Qin Lingjun stepped back a few steps and said goodbye to the most sacred master. Then he turned and ran down the stone arch bridge. He didn't dare to return directly to Luapa Mountain. He planned to go to Qilong Lane to find Brother Jia for a drink. The boy in Xingyi had already ran away, suddenly stopped, turned and shouted loudly, Sacred Master, I think you are still the most powerful. I don't understand how powerful it is. Anyway, it's this? Qin Lingjun raised his arms high and gave a thumbs up. The old master smiled and nodded, which was also very comforting. The heaven and the earth, the rebellious journey of all things, the time and the passerby of 100 generations, I am also a pedestrian on the road. Sad and bitter? Oddly fortunate. I went to Jun's house unknowingly while crossing the water to see the flowers. The old master expressed his gratitude to the whole world and also said goodbye. The monk walks in the wind, gallops to the sun and the moon and is kind. People in the world, because they are not free, are pursuing freedom, hoping that next time the vicissitudes of life will turn into a blessing. Everyone will have plenty of food and clothing and they will be full of books. Finally, the most sage master glanced at the back alley of the town. The small alley is called Mud Bottle Alley. The sky is healthy, and the gentleman strives for self-improvement. A flower grows out of the silt and makes a bottle with your own heart. Isn't it beautiful when the flower opens? I believe that the other two who traveled in the small town also viewed that one in this way. Lao Guanzhu glanced at the side of the mountain road, like a white cloud falling from the green hills. In addition, there is a female martial artist walking down the mountain. The young man in white is walking around in circles around the woman, screaming, bouncing, and playing clumsy punches. The woman is accustomed to it. She turned a blind eye to his troubles, went down the mountain and walked and fisted. The old master was too lazy to look at that Chui Dongshan again. He stretched out his hand and grabbed it. There were two more things in his hand, a token rune sword cast by Longquan Sword Sect, and a safe and sound card issued by the Ministry of Penalty. Rustic. As for where the two things came from, God knows. The master of Old View held the Fujian with his and squinted his eyes for a closer look. As expected, there is an ancient sword technique that is not easily detectable. A trainer with insufficient realm is destined to fail to see through it. As for what is meant by inadequate realm, of course it is not enough under the 14th realm of Qi training and Ascension realm sword repair. It's just that the sword art is incomplete. I want to make it up. About MO5 or 6 rune swords are needed. However, no matter what the price of the rune sword is, as long as someone is willing to do this, it is a very profitable business. How can you make a profit? This sword tactic alone is enough to make a kendo sect stand a firm foothold in the vast world. The key is that the threshold of this tactic is low. As long as you are a sword cultivator, you can practice sword practice step by step without having a good qualification. Strength, the rank of sword arts is not high, but it is safe to practice. Therefore, the larger the sect, the more important this kind of Taoism is. On the other side of the steps, Cui Dongshan leaped high, turned sideways, settled by the table, shook his 2 big white sleeves, looked up and said to himself, "Autumn is coming, the autumn breeze is clear and the autumn moon is coming. Ming, the autumn clouds are full of emptiness, and the autumn water falls into the sky." Then he closed his gaze, first glanced at the old cook, and then at the old master who is no stranger to him. Cui Dongshan said with a hippie smile, "Autumn is coming and the rivers are flooded with vast rivers and rivers. It's hard to argue." Julien smiled and put it down, saying this was a bit awkward. Cui Dongshan sat on the bench with his back to the table, raised his foot and turned around and asked, "The mountains and rivers are lush, the clouds are deep and the roads are remote. Where does the veteran come from?" Julien licked the melon seeds and put himself in an old-fashioned view, probably about to start beating people. The old Guanju sneered, "There are cracks in everything in the world, and everything you see in your eyes, even the golden body of the gods, is invisible. Even the Taoist mind of a cultivator is not a complete one. This path, it won't work. If Yu Chuiyang spends his entire life, you still can't find it. It's destined to be useless. Otherwise, why should the patriarch of the 3 religions come here? Dao and Yi, if it is a certain object, wouldn't it be upset again?" Cui Dongshan complained, "What a bastard, I am Dongshan." The old view subject chuckled. Cui Dongshan shook his shoulders, muttering words like those of the master of the school. "Besides, the road is close? No eyelashes. The road is far away? What happens is true. The sage is near? Participate in business. The sage is far away? Enlightenment. God." The old master smiled and said, "Chuiyang, at any rate, there was still a scholar who looked like a scholar. If you had such a virtue back then, you can guarantee that you will not get out of the lotus root." Cui Dongshan patted his chest as if he was terrified. The old Guanju drank a sip of tea. "If you will be a wife, you will conceal it on both sides and you will not be a daughter-in-law. In fact, it is often difficult to conceal from both sides." Wiping the table with his sleeve, Cui Dongshan rolled his eyes and said, "Senior's words are not appropriate." Seeing that this guy continued to play stupid, he turned his head and looked at the woman who was walking along the steps and asked, "Is this the boxing disciple you picked?" Julien smiled and said, "Not a registered disciple. What's more, my 3-legged cat kung fu, a woman has learned it, is not beautiful." Old Guanju disapproved and asked the woman, "Your name is Xianxia?" Tsin, the mountain is small and high, describing the extreme appearance of the rocky cliffs. The Mandarin machine is a secular brocade machine, and poets have the metaphor of moving flowers and shadows. Luchin always does whatever he wants. He likes to put long lines to catch big fish, but it doesn't matter if he can't catch them. Whether it's Sure Row in Riding Dragon Alley or Jean Li, a robe with 7 turns and twists, it's like a bait who only asks for a wish, and doesn't care about the broken fishing line or the swimming fish that eat bait. Xianxia had just stopped at the gate of the mountain. She knew how serious it was. An old Taoist priest who could make Mr. Zhu and Cui Dongshan take the initiative to go down the mountain to meet is not easy. For some reason the old Taoist looked as usual, but Xianxia felt extremely stressed, holding his fist and saying, in reply to the Taoist, "The junior's name is indeed Xianxia." Julien smiled and said, "What to scare a little girl into?" Cui Dongshan beckoned, "Millet, let's knock some melon seeds." The little girl in black immediately got up from the bamboo chair, trot to the table, and took out all the remaining melon seeds from the cotton bag, but not many. "Here, brother." Cui Dongshan slapped his head and asked, "Right guard, just like that?" Hearing the name of the big white goose, Xiaomi Li kept his face straight, and took out a large amount from his sleeve. Cui Dongshan nodded, "The right guard is generous." Lao Guanju asked Julien again, "How about the sword technique? Are you planning to choose from the sword fairy embryos of the Great Wall of Sword Qi?" The same old master, the Taoist master son of Dashuan Duguan, urged Lu Qin to go and turn to reincarnation as a sword repairman. This is not all a joke but a targeted one. Of course, just because of Sun Weishong's temper, Lu Qin really wants to be a sword repairman. It is estimated that no matter what, Lu Qin will be turned into a little Taoist boy with the lowest level of Xiandu, and he will call his ancestor a few times a day, otherwise he will hang on the peach tree. Zhu Lian smiled and said, I don't have the face to teach others swordsmanship, it's not a misunderstanding. Haoran Jianxiu, and throwing one to the blessed lotus root, is a well-deserved sword fairy. In the history of Uwafudi, there are also some deeds of land immortals recorded in the history of barnyard officials, but there is no evidence to find out. Zhu Lian has also started to compile official history books in addition to calculating accounts and construction, and has seen many unfamiliar history of barnyard officials. What kind of immortal and ilk spit out sword pills, white light flashed, and thousands of miles took the first level? However, even in the hometown, even these rumors of ghosts, mentioning the sword immortal line, there is nothing good to say. What is not the avenue of longevity but the side magic? The flying sword technique is difficult to achieve the avenue. But Zhu Lian's road to martial arts, in the final analysis, really came from books. This is exactly the same as Jia Sheng, a scholar in the world. They are all self-taught without a teacher. They only rely on reading to learn and become talented, but one is practice. One is martial arts. When Zhu Lian first walked the rivers and lakes, he also traveled far with a sword, traveled all over the famous mountains and rivers and visited immortals. Another, with hidden thoughts, Zhu Lian wanted to know the boundary of the world. If it is really a round sky, no matter how vast the world is, there will be an end, right? The millet grain did not go far, his face was shocked and he turned his head and asked, Does the old cook still play a sword? Zhu Lian waved his hand, What kind of swordsmanship? Don't listen to the polite words of such guests, it is far behind Pei Qin's crazy swordsmanship. Cui Dongshan lowered his head and licked melon seeds. Xiaomi grains, don't you know this old cook took off his apron in the stove, went out and played with swords. He was very famous in the lotus roots. It is said that on the long sword of the noble son Zhu Lian, what is entwined is the charming sentiment of the woman, which is incomparable to Yumi. I don't know how many women from the rivers and lakes have turned to practice swords infatuated for a lifetime, just to be able to compare with the old chef field. Cui Yang once followed the old talents and traveled to the lotus roots, and knew a lot about the local customs there. Millet hurriedly covered his stomach with one hand, pressed his mouth vigorously and said vaguely, The old cook was once a noble son. Zhu Lian smiled and said, The hero doesn't mention the bravery back then, it's all things of the past. The world affairs are all based on false accusations. Millet nodded heavily, turned around and ran back to the bamboo chair, grinning, just taking care of the old cook's face without a laugh. The left guardian in Qilong Alley just slipped to the gate of the mountain and looked up at the old Taoist from a distance. It immediately turned around and ran away. Old Guanzhou glanced, but unfortunately for some reason Ruanxiu changed his mind, otherwise he would have almost complied with the old saying, Toad swallows the moon, Tengu eats the moon. Sui right side came from the hilltop Yujian from another place. She did not take a seat. She wanted to ask the of the lotus root to ask about her husband. Old Guanzhou said to her, Tell Chen Pingan the survival of Tongji's Hao Jindingwen doesn't matter, but Xiao Yuanran must be kept. As for that Ni Yuanran, you only need to talk to him and give out that one. Jindan he is free now. The legal system of Jindingwen originates from the Loguan school of Taoism, which is a line of Taoism that, keep the grass as a building, watch the stars and look at the spirit. As for Ni Yuanzhan who supported Artemisia in the blessed land of Yunku, it was exactly a chess piece thrown out of the blessed land by the old master. Sui right side hesitated and stopped, but in the end he still said nothing. Zhu Lian helped to clear the siege and took the initiative to nod and said, What's so difficult about this? Just talk. Lao Guanzhou asked, Why isn't Jiang Shangzhen of Yuguazang on the mountain? Zhu Lian smiled and said, I should have stayed on the mountain and went to Tongji's Hao together, but our chief Zhou got more angry and ran away to the wild world. Sui caught Zhu Lian's wink on the right, she left silently and went to the millet grain side. Lao Guanzhou looked around and sighed, I have never thought that in the end, your Confucianists will have the most advantage. Yudo probably will be very angry. Once the patriarchs of the three religions were able to practice Taoism, academies, temples and Taoist temples at the same time, then the Haoran world, which is the most accommodating to different teaching questions, would of course receive the most gifts. At the same time as the Taoist ancestors, the patriarch of the three religions will take a trip to the ruins of the old heaven. Of course this big problem will not be left to others. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, The second child is the best. The old master said softly, Just say one thing: when there are no more 15 realms in the world and there are already 14 realms, how would you think about the chance to become a monk in the 14th realm? Cui Dongshan nodded. It's about to change. There are bad and good anyway. I am more inclined to the latter now. The old master asked, now? What? Cui Dongshan said solemnly, my husband is here. The old Guanju turned to look at Zhu Lian, one of Lu Chen's 5 dreams and possibly even the second. Zhu Lian smiled and said, Senior sees what I do, and I am not as handsome as my son. The old View Master laughed and said, it's really a good place. It's a worthwhile trip, and the style is very positive. Sword of Coming Chapter 852. The main reason that the old master came to this Luapa mountain was to see Zhu Lian. Unfortunately, he was a little disappointed. The person in front of him was far from awake. There are only 3.5 monks in the world, so that the old Taoists are most assured and respectful. The saint, the head of Baiyujing, the bodhisattva of the Western Buddhist country. The remaining half, disrespectful but relieved, is Lu Chen. However, the old watcher also has some doubts. Is this Zhu Lian already awake but has not really dreamed from the beginning? Lu Chen, this guy can't do anything. Once there are no such 15th realms between heaven and earth, then any current and future 14th realm great monk, no matter which world he is in, will actually lose one of the biggest shackles. Freedom is closer to the word pure. How unfortunately, there is another ritual saint who is most respectful in the world, but to say that the Qingming world, by Yujing's invincible temper, the second master of Yudo, has been known to passers-by for thousands of years. It is estimated that all the ascended realm great monks, whether they are genealogical monks or Yamazawa Yishio, I am afraid that they will have to carefully weigh the relationship with Baiyujing. Even the existing 14th realm great monks in the Qingming world, as long as they are incompatible with Yuduki, they may need to arrange a retreat for themselves early. Of course, Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang and Dashuan Duguan Sun Daochang will be 2 exceptions. One is rushing to share life and death with Yudo, and the other is the 5th in the world that cannot be beaten by thunder. It is really not a fuel-efficient lamp to learn Dao Fa. What's more, Pan Dao helped you and Lu Chen talk a few good things about the Dry Valley. Yudo still have the face to look for trouble in the poor way, to be a kind and revenge thing? Zhu Lian asked a question for no reason. If the Saint of Rights also leaves, what is the scene of the world? Old Guanzhou smiled and said, this question is too rebellious to ask. Cui Dongshan said bitterly, rusty, too irrational. Thanks to our good temperament, we will not care about your unreasonable troubles. He put his hands together, raised the top of his head and shook it vigorously. Zhu Lian asked again. After the Taoist ancestors went away, the great Sangjiao disappeared for many years, and Lu Chen didn't care about everything. Will Yudo directly use a Baiyujing to detain all the monks of the 14th realms with lightning speed? And most of the ascending realms? Is there such a possibility? If so, is there anyone in Qingming world? Can you stop Yudo? Old Guanzhou sneered. Wu Shuangjiang has long given Yudo a saying that is similar to the conclusion of a coffin. If you do not cultivate morality, the people in the boat will be the enemy country, and the way to die is. Speaking of this, Lao Guanzhou smiled. Sun Guanzhou is always a bad guy. After listening to this admonition, he openly scolded Wu Shuangjiang and said to let your mother's ass. My friend Yudo is who? Really invincible. What about an enemy country in one boat? What Yu Daoyu wants is this kind of feat that seems dangerous, but is actually a false alarm. As for the implication of the old Guanzhou, of course, in addition to Sui Chu Gong and Shendu Guan, he who has now migrated Guantao Guan to the Qingming world is also a person in the same boat as Yudo. Cui Dongshan poured a cup of tea for the old Guanzhou. Senior, anyway, you and my husband are considered to have passed each other year after year. It's rare to take a trip to the Luapa mountain. Next time I visit, I really don't know that the year of the ox and the moon are worse than me. Take you around Jiaisfeng? Old Guanzhou laughed and said, don't make friends with the poor roads indiscriminately. It is considered the best to give Qin Pingan a rubbing of the lotus flower blessed land. Cui Dongshan is still unwilling to give up. It's just a walk in Luapa mountain. Seniors didn't agree to it. It's too unreasonable. Every step this old Taoist takes in the world, the place where he sets foot is very particular because it is a place to cultivate everywhere. Plowing in spring and harvesting in autumn, wearing shackles for a long time, busy in the field all his life. Who are you talking about? The bullish temper of this old master is of course because of his bullish qualifications. What is the field? In the early years, the heaven and the earth were the fields. Above the earth, the soil all has age and attributes. The rain and grass grows, the tillers work hard, the farmers sow hundreds of grains, the mortals' homes camp the fields, the thin ground is dung, and the light soil wraps it with ox feet. Then weak soil becomes stronger. While the art of squashing the green, the method of suppressing the green seems to be common, but in fact it has a lot of origins, and the method of suppressing the victory. This old predecessor of the Taoist temple of the East China Sea, the path that he took, can finally turn the filthy stale air between the heavens and the earth into a clear air, and this mysterious clear air is more regarded as the fundamental aura of the Tao than the practitioners. And even more difficult to obtain with human resources. If spiritual qi is the foundation of practice, then clear qi is the source of luck. The old peasant ancestor in the hundreds of families, if he was lucky enough to meet this old master, he would only be more exaggerated than Chui Dongshan. Benefit to its people in good years, with fertile grains, it belongs to the good fortune of God in the year of the new year. How can Chui Dongshan miss this once-in-lifetime opportunity, and can't wait to take the veteran to walk through the green waters and green mountains of all the hills of his own? Being a person, you have to be so down to earth. Old Guanju shook his head. Such a simple way of profit and loss. Do you need me to teach you how to embroider tigers? Chui Dongshan looked sad and wiped the table back and forth with his sleeve. Senior cursed again. Old Guanju was full of sarcasm. You deserve to be the student of Chen Pingan, and you are not ashamed. Chui Dongshan's glamour was flying in an instant. The master of the old view is praised again, and I am a little caught off guard. The old master was too lazy to talk nonsense with this incomprehensible fellow, and he turned to the topic abruptly and said straightforwardly, the green cliffs on the banks of the Dragon's Beard must be taken away by the poor road. Now who is the land boundary over there in name? Li Song? Or the Ruan Xiong who still holds the title of saint? In the words of the Dali court, it is easy to say that the poor road traveled to the site of the Liju cave, and after these steps, it was already compensated. The fine water flowed and the grace continued. If it is Ruan Xiong, a monk on the mountain who owns the boundary of the Longshu River, then he can do a deal with him. Why give Ruan Xiong this face? Of course it is his daughter Ruan Xiu. Relying on the realm, forcing and forbidding? In this way the key is to pay attention to a cycle of heaven. A monk, as long as he lives long enough, he will truly understand a truth. If he owes a debt, he must pay the debt. Except for the head of the family like the patriarch of Sanjiao, the whole world is 1 acre 3/4 of his own land. Once again, the first-class sites are blessed places and caves, similar to the lotus flower blessed places of the old master in his own home. Julien was a little surprised and glanced at Chui Dongshan on the side. Chui Dongshan looked helpless and shook his head to Julien. It was because I missed it and missed a big omission. Before, Chui Dongshan really didn't see the magic of that sandstone cliff. Otherwise, I had known this a long time ago, and I had already moved Chui Dongshan to Luapa Mountain as a feng shui stone, so that this stinky and old-fashioned object can be known to all fools. However, being a man is not afraid of making mistakes, and correcting and remedying mistakes is what he is. Chui Dongshan craned his neck, looked at the river, and began to settle accounts. Longshu River was originally a small stream. If I remember correctly, it was called Huxi, and the Qin clan of Huxi in the early years belonged to Liju Dongtian. First-class surname, but later fell down. By coincidence, my ancestor happened to have a field over there. I really have to worry about it, but it's not our family business in Laupa Mountain. As for Tianqi, if the old master thinks he'll look back and find out. Of course Chui Dongshan was talking nonsense. Old Guanju was so foolish. He directly separated out 3 mines, went to the county town and county office respectively, and the Longzhou Kiln Affairs Supervision Bureau, and quickly read it through. The household registration and land deeds even carefully deduced the Longshu River, which was called Wuxia in ancient times, the changes in the river course and the fields. Human affairs in the world, the foundation is moisturized, the ins and outs, there are traces to follow. Old Guanju retracted his mind, frowned slightly, and glanced at the blacksmith shop by the river, Lu Xianying, a young sword repairman in the Yupu realm. Chui Dongshan suddenly realized, stroking his palms and smiling, understood, it's no wonder that the Grand Master who traveled to the lotus flower blessed place back then praised the fall of the galaxy and the bottom of the lotus flower. Then I understand why you was deliberately thrown here on credit. It turns out that this is the opportunity for her to break the realm in the future, and it is impossible to say that the blue cliff is a moon palace mirror. What a strange stone. The blue cliff gathers the roots of clouds. Suspected is the ancient moon. Reunion falls here. Old master, I guessed it, right? Old Guanju said, you go and make a price for the poor Tao and the sword repairer. It's better to be less involved with this sleepwalking young man. Naturally he is not afraid of a sword repair, but is worried about being careless. A certain ancient will follow the context to find his self, who has not yet attained Tao. Isn't everything going away? Lao Guan squinted his eyes and smiled. If you want to help him sit on the floor and raise the price, it's okay. Cui Dongshan drank a big sip of tea, moisturized his throat, and shouted with his heartfelt voice, Lu Yusue and Lu Yusue brother, I have something to ask for. At the blacksmith's shop, Lu Xianying was eating sunflower seeds on the bamboo chair under the eaves. He was busy chatting with Xianhuan on the side. He heard the voice of Brother Cui and said, What is it? If you want to ask for something, please, then don't speak. No, I don't have such a brother. Cui Dongshan sniffed and wiped his face with his sleeve. What is a brother? That's it for Brother Lu. Cui Dongshan quickly talked to Lu Xianying about the general situation. He said that the benefits of this transaction may have to be returned to Luopishan. Because of the lack of a treasure of Jinshan that he dreamed of, he just happened to be taken advantage of. That thing. Cui Dongshan didn't talk about any compensation, what was converted into Guyu money to Lu Xianying. Lu Xianying turned his head and spit out the melon seed shell and said, Damn it, it's a big deal, it's easy to talk, remember to let the bully give enough capital. Lu Xianying caught a glimpse of the round-faced girl from the corner of his eye, and suddenly shouted, Wait a moment, I have to discuss with girl you first. Cui Dongshan tweeted, Lu Yu is asleep, what's the matter with you? If you have a daughter-in-law you will forget your brothers. It's okay. I can recognize you. Lu Xianying turned her head and Xiaoyu roughly talked about the doorway of the stone cliff, which might be her chance of breaking, but when she heard about the Moon Palace and the treasures, she was the most annoyed of these twists and turns, so she simply pretended not to hear anything. Besides, what about Lu Xianying? What do you ask me to do? What is our relationship? There seems to be nothing. Nowadays there are fewer and fewer ducks in the Longshu River, and there are fewer old duck bamboo shoots in the shop. Her mood is not getting better. So she also bought a litter of fluffy little ducklings. They only kept it day by day. After raising them they developed feelings. She also warned Lu Xianying not to make any decisions. Lu Xianying immediately replied to Cui Dongshan with her heartfelt voice, Ms. You said, it doesn't matter for my face, it doesn't matter what chance is not, she's not rare at all. Cui Dongshan was amazed, sister-in-law is really a good match, Brother Lu is so lucky. Thinking of something, Cui Dongshan vowed to promise. Looking back, you married Miss Yu. If my brother is the third largest member of the money, I will have your last name. Lu Xianying curiously asked, Who gave the money to the biggest guy? Chen Pingyan? Cui Dongshan laughed and said, My husband has no money, it must be our chief of the week in La Peishan. Lu Xianying nodded and said, Remember to remind Chief Zhou if things are busy and there are not enough people, you can get the red envelopes, and let him figure out how much money you can get. You have to help me with the specific words, Brother Cui. Fan, that's what I mean anyway. Cui Dongshan slapped his chest loudly. Old Guanju suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, Cui Dongshan, you can say something to Lu Xianying, Xia will be a fairy soldier if he is refined properly. Cui Dongshan relayed this sentence without hesitation. Lu Xianying jumped on the spot and said, Xian Bing? Brother Cui, please increase the price quickly and let the buyer add money to the death. It's okay anyway, it's just that. Don't bother me, otherwise the brothers won't have to do it. Cui Dongshan really stopped speaking and looked back from the Longshu River. A person like Lu Xianying is actually envious of everyone. The old Guanju took advantage of Cui Dongshan and Lu Xianying's speech, and made a little calculation to trace the origin. Lu Xianying's ancestors were proficient in the techniques of disturbing dragons, scorpion dragons and cutting dragons. In fact, he was given a compound surname Yulong, and the earliest Lu character was originally shaped like axe and warriors, and it was a very majestic one. Text. After the Battle of Xianlong, it is estimated that it was the ancestor of the Lu family and changed back to the Lu family name. Otherwise, in this Liju cave, the descendants of the tribe will have the surname Yulong, which is too dazzling, and will be invisibly suppressed and restrained by a small cave, which will hurt the numerology of future generations. It will naturally be difficult for a family to flourish and multiply. Prosperity. Old Guanju asked, This young man, did he know about his family affairs? Cui Dongshan smiled and said, Do you know it's still Lu Xianying? So Tianhuan led the red line for Lu Xianying and Naipingxiang Jigui. Of course she did not do it at will. God to enjoy food, you will be able to settle down and live a life steadily, and the patriarch will have a great skill in appreciating food and eating, and you can eat it wherever you go. But if a person doesn't change his mind and doesn't think about it, in fact, even if God and patriarch are enjoying the meal together, it's no good. It's like a person who has an empty rice bowl but no rice. You don't know the blessing in the blessing because you don't know how to take a step back and think. According to the mountain, this is called a discord between the art and the way. Of course Lu Xianying's qualifications are very good, but in fact, there are not many fairy seeds with the qualifications of monasticism in the world, and they just quietly spend their lives in the world, and even live and seek a life, and their lives are not as good as many ordinary masters. If Lu Xianying's heart is slightly divergent, such as laziness, for example being stingy, maybe in Huaihuan County today, there will be an extra bachelor who goes around all day long and only complains all year round. Cui Dongshan asked with a smile, "Senior, give me a price that matches a fairy soldier?" Old Guanju stretched out his hand, a piece of purple moire paper was spread out of thin air on the table, and his fingers were drawn together. The most important book of Taoism in the world is to write the scriptures of 3 mountains and draw the runes of the true shape of the 5 mountains. Ancient immortal officials and gods, who must not be taught by immortals and green books. Early monks, looking for famous mountains, looking for great waters, opening mountains and establishing sects, building cities along the water, and admiring this picture, mountain ghosts, strange Narcissus, and all evil spirits dare not get close. In the end, Tao Fa was scattered and widely spread in the world. In addition to the great circulated search for mountains, there are also these 5 sacred figures. It is just that the practitioners who draw this kind of Tao diagrams of later generations do not know the true rhyme of Tao Fa, and are unacceptable. Entering the door, the shape is not similar and the look is naturally more scattered. Cui Dongshan knew that Lao Guanju would know that he knew what he would give. No need to say anything. Cui Dongshan lay on the table, exclaiming amazement, expressing respect and gratitude. The old view master uses the Taoism, consumes the Tao Qi and infuses it with the subtle Taoism. In short, the old view master traces this map on the Taoism vein, like the method of rubbing a monument. The more you copy, the shallower the meaning. Zhu Lian carefully looked at the painting of the old Taoist, smiled and said, "I can't afford to buy mountains to learn from the beauty, the weather is in the painting. After imitating it by myself, it seems that the 9-point form is not difficult, but in the end it is a bit like you have to wait for the pen to get the answer." Cui Dongshan twisted a corner of the scroll, shook it slightly and waited. It is guessed that this old master has displayed his supernatural powers for the 2nd time. If it is the first time, it will be an immortal soldier with both offense and defense. So the true picture in hand is inferior. This picture of the ancestor of the Taoist book can almost be regarded as a 2nd-class authentic. It's a pity that it's just a semi-celestial rank. If it's a heavy treasure of the attack, it won't be used up. It's just a violent thing. But if it's framed into a drawing and hung inside the house, it's terrific. Just 1 sentence, then in about 1,000 years, there will be no misfortune, and there will be no more worries of a house of cleverness and ghosts overlooking its households. Cui Dongshan sighed, "Senior, it's not as easy to carry around as a shaft as it is mounted on the wall. The old view is indifferent." Cui Dongshan had to say, "Senior himself said that he was a little refined and he is a fairy soldier, but in this Taoist picture how can the younger be refined, how can he be promoted to the fairy soldier? Besides, the handwork of the senior is almost limited the best, the younger generation has no abilities and can't bear it, and even less dare to make superfluous things." Old Guanju smiled and said, "Then the poor Tao will take back the phrase refining the immortal soldier. Do you want to pretend that you didn't hear it, or is the poor Tao troublesome and take back a sentence so that you really can't hear it?" The millet grains over the mountain gate were actually staring at the table all the time. She was mainly worried that the seeds would be gone or the tea would not be enough. Suddenly she noticed that Big White Goose had a hand around her back and hooked herself. Xiaomi Li frowned her 2 small eyebrows. "What is the Big White Goose doing? My own clever little brain is not enough." She thought about it, but she still didn't understand. It was because she was powerless and couldn't help. "I don't care about the millet grains," so I said a word in advance, stood on tiptoe and shouted to the kind-looking old gentleman, "Old gentleman, do you like tea? Would you like some tea?" Old Guanju smiled and nodded. Millet grains rushed to Zheng Daifeng's house immediately, and took tea to the old chieftain. While running, he turned his head and reminded, "Old chieftain, you're not chasing guests. Keep drinking tea and eating melon seeds. Wait a while, don't worry. Let me help you get more." Luo Guan stood up, but 2 more white jade scrolls appeared on the table. Julian smiled at Cui Dongshan. "Sure enough, we still have a big frame for the right guardian, and it has the most face." The old Guanju waved his sleeve and put the rock cliff into his sleeve. The green cliff on the riverside is still there, and the shape is divine. Cui Dongshan put away the picture scroll and the white jade axis, and then stood up with Zhu Lian. This point of hospitality is still necessary. Unexpectedly, the old Guanzhu took his seat again and sneered, "Why did you want to leave? Luopishen wants to drive guests?" Cui Dongshan sat down and Zhu Lian asked with a smile, "Why don't you go up the mountain to eat a meal before leaving?" As a result, the old View Master turned a deaf ear, stood up again and said, "Whether it is waking up from a dream or falling into a dream, you will be treated as if you owe a meal in the Qingming world. If you die in this mountain for so long, then you will be the poor." I didn't say anything. Julien smiled and nodded. Old Guanzhu finally took a pot of tea from the little girl in black and thanked him. The millet grain scratched his head. The old man is too polite. The master of Laoguan raised his eyes and overlooked. The mountains and rivers stretched. The water was low and the mountains were high. Why mountaineering and what is monasticism? Murmured, the mountains echoed. Qingtu, Wei Jin and Chao Jun were inexplicably, just like the hosts of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Those who come and go must come and say hello to them. Insert an app. A perfect re-engraving of the old version of the book-chasing artifact, an app that can change the source. Chao Jun is very happy. In recent years, it can be said that the time has come to work, staying around to practice swordsmanship, and met a lot of big people one after another. First, he met an unknown Taoist who seemed to be Qin Ping's uncle, and then he returned to his hometown. Ning Yao, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji, and the third master of Baiyujing, Lu Chen even invited himself to the Qingming world in person, and why not enter the summer palace? Our uncle Chao Jun can follow as long as he nods his head. Master Lu is a guest at Baiyujing. Xianxia and Dai Zhang fell directly beside Xiao Yunyan. The former sword fairy of Chunbanzhai also has Mrs. Yen Yen, and the digital sword of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Xiao Yunyan explained the situation to the two local swordsmen. For Qin Sanxiu, Xiao Yunyan is very optimistic. Qin Sanxiu wondered, "Xiao Jianxian, is Qin Pingan broken again?" Xiao Yunyan shook his head, "It's still Yupu realm, but I don't know what's going on." After Master Lu borrowed the lotus crown to the hermit, the realm suddenly became indistinct. Qin Sanxiu can call Qin Pingan by his name casually, and Xiao Yunyan still has to be respectfully called a hermit. Dai Zhang said, "Wherever people go, business will follow wherever they go. The second shopkeeper will definitely not lose money." Mrs. Yen Yen was originally on Qin Ping An's side, and she finally had a little more confidence, but after being so troubled today she started to commit crimes to the hermit. Why, in the Howran world I became the closed disciple of Master Wensheng, and became the last hermit in the Great Wall of Jianghu. I still don't give up. I will go to Qingming world in the future, and I won't be able to be the four masters of Baiyujing? Qin Sanxiu knelt on one knee looking into the distance in a daze. The melancholy traveler who likes to drink finally returned to his hometown, but the person he was thinking of was in another country and he dared not even drink. Next to the stack, the woman has one-armed, one sleeve is knotted, she is thin and slender, but she carries a big sword. The awe-inspiring scenes of the world are indeed all surprising. The mountains and rivers are magnificent, the four seasons have four seasons, the water surface is clear and round, and the mountain flowers bloom like burning. The fisherman on the river is supported by an worm, and the rest of the clouds are in the spring, and they are scattered into beautiful flowers. They are all extremely beautiful scenes, but I have seen them, but they are just like that. I see more and forget more. It is Qin Sanxiu who has published an extra travel notebook, which records in detail the customs and experiences along the way. Xiao Yunyan knew the origin of the two swords, which was borrowed by a Liang and Dallas imitation by Yujing back then jokingly. "You two have such a good relationship with the hermit, you even missed the sect of Luopa Mountain. The celebration is very unacceptable. Why, I am worried that the Song clan will ask you for these two long swords. Beipingzu, especially the Kendo heir luck of the Dai dynasty, in fact, will receive some gifts invisibly. In addition to the existence of Qin Pingan and Wei Jin, it is like a barren field that is not suitable for farming, and there will be Kendo seeds constantly growing. As for the fate of swordsmanship in the old Zhuang dynasty, it is nothing compared to the Great Wall of Swordsmanship." Tucked at the corners of his mouth, "Return the sword? What kind of sword was given to us by Aliang? If the court of Dali has the ability, go to talk to Aliang." Qin Sanxiu smiled and said, "It's okay, you're welcome with Chen Pingan. After the big deal there will be the next celebration in Luopa Mountain. Dai Zhang and I will each give 2 gifts." Over the years of travels in various continents in Howran, apart from sword practice, foreign objects have been rewarded little by little. For example, during the period in Dai Zhang and Luxiazu, they strayed into a forbidden mountain and water secret, and both sides picked up some treasures. An appointment has been made with Dai Zhang, and when anyone enters the upper 5 realms, they will create their own kendo sect in the wild world. Daizhang is the suzerain. He come to be the founder of the law of the mountain palm. Flying city in the colorful world, needless to say, the contention is not one moment and one place, but the whole world for thousands of years. Qi Tingji established the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Qin Pinggan's Luapa Mountain is also the beginning of the zone. Qingming Xianxia, I only mentioned that Dong Huafu and Yan Ming, who are my friends, will definitely not be any Taoist officials in their lives. In the future they will all be established in the mountain. It is estimated that they will be similar to themselves and Daizhang. The two are in partnership. Fatty Yen is unwilling to make money, but Dong Haitan is a perfect match to spend money on Dong Haitan. Especially Dong Huafu. He is a child with weird temperament when he was young. In Dong Sanjing's words, it is my Dong family who has a talented genius. What? At a young age I know how to walk Aliang. Dong Huafu is really close to Aliang in size and he doesn't see him at all. Every time he goes out he likes to find Aliang. He runs all the way and chooses all the way. Finally he returns the same way. Because there is a money bag around him, the child is the same. Aliang, give me money. Quarreling or fighting with peers on Taixiang Street and Yuhu Street, it's fine if you can't fight, but if you can't fight just say something cruel, wait, he'll go to Aliang and let him kill you. Meeting those unreserved adults who made fun of his mother's dear Mu Aliang, what a fool with me, be careful I let Aliang out. Pang Yuanji in the Summer Palace seems to have gone to the Western Buddhist country. In such a barren world, there should also be the opening of the Great Wall of Jianqi. All the sects in the world, the common ancestral mountain, the earliest ancestor hall, is probably the Great Wall of Jianqi at the foot. The future is still vast, but the future is definitely expected. Probably this is what Qin Pinggan calls, a person, no matter who he is, has so many hopes? Qin Sanqia's current hopes are also several. In addition to creating sects in the wild world, he will also go to wuxialover in the future and meet his ancestors. Of course there is that girl Dong Bu who has been asking for it. He Qiuxing and Qin Sanqiu said, I have seen Qin Jianxian. Before, on the side of Dragon Elephant Sword sect, he Qiuxing and Qin Sanqiu met, but they couldn't speak. Qin Sanqiu frowned and said, you have admitted the wrong person, I am not Qin Pinggan. The teenager was caught off guard. Looking at the white sword fairy with a displeased face, the young man felt anxious. As a son of the Qin family on Taixiang Street, Qin Sanqia's family ancestor was the old sword fairy Qin Shi who engraved the city head like master, and master said in private that Qin Sanqiu, who stayed in the vast world, had a great future. Not low. Once you join Confucianism, you may have a certain natal character. However, the reason why he Qiuxing wanted to say a few words to Qin Sanqiu was that the teenager actually had a strange reason because there was an autumn character in their names. Qin Sanqiu suddenly smiled and said, remember, in the future, don't call a sword repairman in the Yuan realm Jianxian, because it is easy to be slapped by a sack. Yi Qiuxing was speechless. Wu Manyan, a girl with bright eyes and an outspoken heart, came to Daizhang and said loudly, I am glad to see Senior Daizhang again. Daizhang smiled and nodded. In fact, the first time I met the little girl in Nanpasuazhou in his early years, Daizhang was puzzled afterwards. The little girl's words and deeds were respectful and respectful. In her smart and lovely eyes, she seemed to be full of admiration for herself. Daizhang didn't know what Wu Manyan admired about what she did, so she wouldn't lose her arm than ordinary people. Wu Manyan really has a heartfelt respect for Daizhang. The reason couldn't be simpler. The woman in front of her is a prosperous wine shop treasurer. Big shopkeeper. Hidden officials are just second shopkeepers. Mr. Liu said that in business, Mr. Qin was better at Jianqi Great Wall than when he was a hidden official in the Summer Palace. In the Great Wall of Jianqi, Mr. Qin can no longer be an official as an official, except that he is still under the control of the old sword fairy in name, then only the sister Daizhang in front of him can let Mr. Qin come to help. Not far away, 5 Tonggizang Jianxiu joined together at the top of the city. The previous heavy snow came and went without a trace, and then the 5 sword lights dragged the sky, making them realize that today's Jianqi Great Wall sight must happen. Unusual things of gods and people. In my heart, my identity is special. Li Wanyong, carrying an ancient sword Xuanhuan, is a direct disciple of the former suzerain. Du Yen, because he is a child of the Du family, is the most difficult one among the 5. In just over 10 years he has suffered a lot of catastrophes. The family affairs and the family have all the problems. This young sword repairman feels that he will eat all the grievances of his life. When I was full, I replaced it with bitterness. As for Qin Shuihu, he has great literary attainments since he was a child. He has a clear and beautiful poetry and he is famous on the mountain and under the mountain. He is especially good at long fu, discussing before the narrative and coming in the second time. Around that year I was a guest in Tonggizong for a while, and I personally said that there was even a decent seed for reading. Master Wang looked respectful, took the lead in holding his fist and asked Wei Jin, "Dare to ask Wei Jianxian, where does this vision come from?" Master Wang is the only one who has practiced in the Great Wall of Sword Qi among the 5 swordsmen of Tonggizong. This Jianxiu born in Tongya Xiexu was in the Golden Core realm at that time, and then left the Jianqi Great Wall with the left and right to rush to Tonggizong. In the Great Wall of Jianqi, Master Wang didn't have the nerve to say his hometown. Whether it was his situation or his temperament, it was a bit similar to the old Jian Ziyu who has now become the worship of Luopa Mountain. Bao Pingzhou, because there were young hidden officials and Fengshua Temple in the Wei and Jin dynasties, instead of being looked down upon by the Great Wall of Jianqi, he took a high look. At any rate, there were 2 sword immortals who went to death generously in Aizhou, and later there was a female sword immortal xuanhuan who made military exploits. Only Tong Yezhou on the side of the Great Wall of Sword Qi is simply worthy of the name. Wei Jin explained, Chen Pingan, Ning Yao, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji and Bai Yujing taught Lu Shen. The 5 went to the wilderness to help Aliang who was in the hinterland battlefield. Master Wang was stunned. Ning Yao and Qi Tingji are sword repairmen in the Ascension realm. Lu Ji is one of the top 10 peak sword immortals in the city. Although he is still in the fairyland for the time being, his combat power is completely comparable to that of the Ascending Realm sword repair. The key is why there is more Lu Shen. Furthermore, Aliang and the left and right, how can they run to the hinterland of the wild world to shoot their swords together? And such a lineup led by the hidden official all the way south, who dares to show up and who can stop it in the wild world? 5 sword repairmen, a 14th realm monk who did not kill. Master Wang was slurried, but he didn't dare to ask Wei Jin any more. Uxan hesitated for a moment and asked in his heart, Wei Jianxian, how is Mr. Zhua? Caring is messy. Wei Jin said, if the overall situation of the battlefield has been decided, Qin Pingan will not go this trip. Uxan breathed a sigh of relief. Li Wanyong glanced at this famous Snow Wind Temple great sword immortal, obviously a little surprised, a great sword immortal with outstanding combat power, why didn't he walk with them? It is a joke to say that the Wei and Jin dynasty are greedy for life and fear of death. I used to ask the heavenly monarch of Jianbeiju Luzhou twice to thank you in the Yupu realm and the fairy realm, so this is strange. Wei and Jin were amiable on Wang Shizi's side because Wang Shizi, as a wild cultivator, was willing to come to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Wang Shizi practiced his sword beside Mr. Zhua. As for this person who didn't recognize him, he kept looking at himself with his eyes, so Wei Jin reminded him, external sword repairers, keep your eyes in check. There are only 2 types of sword repairs in the world. Those who have made swords in the Great Wall of Sword Qi and those who have never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Chao Jun smiled and said, there are 2 groups of genealogical monks from the Middle-earth divine continent in front of us. Our mountain owner, the hermit, has lost the slightest temper. Lessons learned, you outsiders, you must let me take it as a warning. Besides, our mountain lord is more grudges. How did Jingyang Mountain end? Have you heard of it? Especially Li Jianxian, I heard that there is a little conflict with the hermit's senior brother Zhua. Li Wanyong glanced at Chao Jun glanced at Li Wanyong. Can actually be regarded as a pair of difficult brothers who have the same disease, but the 2 of them are even more displeased with each other. On the other side of the sun pendant, the station people include Su Zi, Lu Qi and Dalisong Changjing Yugui sect master Wei Ying. The Tonggizong has been unsettled in recent years and has risen again. After the war ended, the reason why he was able to falter and never fall was due to 2 forces. One was the Dali dynasty in Aquarius Island in the north, and the other was Ben. The Yuguizang of Zhozhou, the new Lord Wei Ying, did not fall into the pit, and took advantage of the situation to infiltrate, split and erode Tonggizong. Instead, during the proceedings of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, he said a few words of great weight for Tonggizong. Can get this love. So the 5 sword repairmen of Tonggizong, the final destination of this trip is not the Great Wall of Sword Qi, but to go to Guishu Sun Pendant to visit Song Changjing and Wei Ying. Moreover, Qin Shuihu and Du Yan are fans of Su Zi and Lu Qi respectively, the kind who can be happy for many years by being able to meet and say a few words. Currently, the position of Sect Master Tongye and the Patriarch Master of Rules are temporarily suspended. After these few young sword repairers discussed, they made a decision. Whoever is the first or second one to enter the Yupu realm, whoever will be the lord and the ruler will hold the front. Wait until Tonggizong gradually recovered his vitality, and then replace it again. In fact, the Tongyshao Patriarch Hall today is just a few of their young people. Next, Xuanhuan went to chat with Mrs. Yan Yan. She seemed to have a relationship with Wu Manyan. Master Wang stayed with Wei Jin, and with this Fengshua Temple Great Sword Immortal, he humbly asked some questions about swordsmanship. Qin's sleeping tiger's sword went to the old master he show, please ask. Du Yen found Xiao Yunyan because the family had a bit of dispensable incense with the Diaoshuan Mountain Chunfan's high earlier, and they were all business dealings. It is said that Xiao Jinxian is not only the genealogical monk of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect, but also from the earliest Dragon Elephant Sword sect guest, was promoted to the person in charge of money. Within 100 years, Xiao Yunyan will be in charge of all affairs of the Zhongmen treasury, and then help the Zhongmen to deal with people and things. He agreed with Qi Tingji for 100 years. Xiao Yunyan will only be a transitional person in charge of money. When the Dragon Elephant Sword sect finds a suitable candidate, Xiao Yunyan will resignation. Tong Yezhou is actually two neighbors, Aquarius Island and Nan Pasua Island. Wei Jin glanced at the woman, Jian Xiao named Uxin, and she gave birth to an exquisite heart. There is still hope for Tongyizong to rise again. Just have to boil. Wei Jin's horizontal sword is on his knees, looking towards the south. I don't know if Lianghe and Qin Pingon can all return safely. At the gate of Luapa Mountain. Just as the old Guanju was about to leave, Cui Dongshan suddenly asked in his heart, "Can you figure it out?" Old Guanju nodded. It's not difficult to calculate the process, but the result is unpredictable. Cui Dongshan looked solemn and asked, "How about it?" Old Guanzhou smiled and said, "For example, 2 people have been promoted to 14 levels, such as someone's sword opening to the Moon Mountain." Sword of Coming Chapter 853. As soon as the old master left, Cui Dongshan immediately picked up a white jade axis on the table, sighed, and wiped it carefully with the white sleeves. One of the joys of life is not to say a false alarm, but also unexpected joy. Don't feel obsessive and kind. Just staying at the gate of the mountain, sitting there drinking tea and sipping melon seeds, is a good talking master. There are a few great monks in the world and 14th realms that no one wants to provoke. It's just that Bai is also a scholar. The old blind man has always been too lazy to pay attention to foreign affairs in the mountain. You can scold as you scold. Don't be heard by the old blind man in person. And the monk who is nicknamed Chicken Soup Monk is so clear that he is a Buddhist dragon elephant with compassion is the heart of the Buddha. Only this stinky nose of the Taoist temple in the East China Sea is the most unrecognizable. Old Guanju never said a word to Sui Right from beginning to end. Sui Right originally wanted to take this opportunity to ask more about his husband, but it was difficult to speak when things came to the fore. In fact, Jiang Shangzhen told her some inside stories about the blessed land of the cloud caves, about the wormwood supporter Ni Yuan Pin, what Jianghu cut mosquitoes, why he disappeared back then, why he was thrown out of the blessed lotus root blessed land by the old master, and spent a long time in a foreign land. There was a 3-legged golden toad on his shoulder. What did Ni Yuan Pin seek? The relationship with Jinding Temple, etc. Jiang Shangzhen had no place to hide. The reason why Jiang Shangzhen is so easy to talk about on the right side of Sui is simple. Both parties eat at the poor mountain. The family does not talk about 2 things, but it is purely the real-world genealogy Zhenxiu and the elder Yugui. The relationship with the suzerain Jiang Shangzhen's reputation has always been stable. Zhu Lian did not sprinkle salt on her wounds, saying that the painstaking effort is worthy of life, and the poor foolish person is always ruthlessly annoyed. Some long-awaited reunion, the more unharmed, the more anxious things are. Sui's expression on the right side was sad, and he did not leave the Luapa mountain without Yu Jin and returned to the place where the cultivating path was formed. Instead, he climbed up the steps, seemingly going to the top of the mountain to enjoy the scenery. Julien picked up the other shaft head, which looked like white jade material, crystal clear jade, but it was not. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be of horns. The 2 shaft heads for hanging pictures on the mounting wall are learned. If they are high and low double shafts, they are collectively called the heaven and earth style. If it is a hand scroll spread out from side to side, it is the sun and moon style. Lao Guanzi's Taoist painting is quite special. It only talks about the shaft head. Of course, it belongs to the sun and the moon because the shape of the 5 sacred mountains is built with heaven and earth. Therefore there are pictures of the world, the sun and the moon are surging and the stars are listed. Cui Dongshan held one of the shaft heads and smiled. Whether this thing is buried in the homestead or pasted on the door, it is used to settle the townhouse, or it is sealed by a talisman. Wearing the scroll on the body, a gash trainer travels through mountains and waters. It's almost like being both the Lord of the Five Mountains and the God of Blasphemy. It has both natural and supernatural powers, and possesses many incredible wonders. Compared with Wu Shuangjiang's couplets that can't be moved, the Taoist paintings of the old masters are more flexible. Some Taoshu scroll, the two combined into one, it becomes a fairy soldier. Zhu Lian asked casually, once the refining is successful, the shaft of the Taoist book is closed, and the monks of the earth fairy can also swim long distances and climb into the water with this thing? The scroll material should be light and not damage the painting, so the scroll heads of the people's homes are mostly wood. Scholars and wealthy families mostly use gold and jade. The fairy mansion on the mountain, the discerning eye, the 1,000-year-old Ganoderma lucidum, and the porcelain scrolls of blue and white or fighting color. Generally it is said that the horn shaft is easy to be eaten by insects, and there is a lot of moisture when unrolled, but this pair of horn shaft heads is most likely the relic of a fellow monk in the ancient times. It is an extremely rare thing that can be encountered and cannot be found. The key is the scroll in Zhu Lian's hand, which is inscribed with the two characters water urn, in ink seal, prosecuting the three realms, sealing the mountains, examining the merits and appreciating the sins and blessings. In addition, there are more than 100 immortal names written in tiny lower letters. The branch in Cui Dongshan's hand is the two characters mountain talisman, in the Danshu, and the clouds are transpiring, heaven and man give urns, there will never be floods, call gods and ghosts and save lives. The image of the mountain by Yuzuan is additionally painted, like a picture of the true worship of the gods. Cui Dongshan shook his head, that's not good, you must be a monk in the upper five realms, otherwise you may not be able to handle it, let alone take it for a long distance. The control of an immortal soldier's treasure has always been a difficult problem for all major sections. Cui Dongshan grinned and said, if it is the destiny of the old master, then we will really send it to Luopishan. Attacks are often just a fancy more used to deter, in general there is no use. But if it can transport the natural energy of a place of mountain, water and air, while continuously gathering the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth, it is the numerology pattern of the heavier the earth and the better. Cui Dongshan sighed, it's a pity it's a thing from the previous dynasty after all, and it has been passed down to this dynasty by luck. Once the emperor and the courtiers, it will be difficult to order the immortals. Zhu Lian smiled and said, it's just right to be full of 8. The more Cui Dongshan looked at it, the more he felt there was a way out, and he exclaimed, but if Mr. is willing to take this thing and take this thing to Judu Mountain, it is estimated that he can directly exchange it for a Taishang Dangdang. As long as Mr. is willing to make a price, Judu the mountainside will definitely sell iron, even if they owe a debt they are willing to buy it. Cui Dongshan said with emotion, our wealth is finally not thin. This Taoist picture of the old Guanju who just succeeded, and the couplets that Wu Shuangjiang gave before. The former can be placed in the Patriarch Hall of Jiaisfeng, and the latter can be hung at the entrance of the Patriarch Hall of the lower sect of Tonggishao. Owning these two treasures of the town, Luopa Mountain and the future Xiazong, you truly have the immortality and confidence of the first-class sect. In addition, there are 2 copybooks that the old scholar asked for from Suzi and Lu Qi. The flowers are posted, and the drunk posts are all energetic and enlightenment. There is both charcoal in the snow and icing on the cake. In the future, as long as Luopa Mountain really opens its branches and leaves, it is estimated that a lot of reading seeds will emerge. Cui Dongshan turned his head and shouted at the millet grain, the right guard has made another great contribution after sailing overnight. At the beginning of the night ship, Qin Pingan and his party were sent to the side by Wu Shuang to wait and see. The result was good, but the process was extremely dangerous. After that, if it weren't for the ingenuity of the millet grains, with Wu Shuangjiang's indifferent temperament, he would not be able to give out the treasure of Jinshan with the rank of immortal soldier under the premise that he had already sent out a piece of, at the time. This post at the time, is now hung in the first floor of the bamboo building where Qin Pingan lived. The 2 seals printed on the copybook have lost all the rhyme of Taoism and replaced it with the repair of the outer Huatian demon. For each word has a realm. There is only one monogram left in the copybook, heart is like a green lotus in the world, still mysterious. The millet grains were so confused that they couldn't even take a look at it. He scratched his head and asked, what? Why did you do something again? Cui Dongshan puts a pair of shaft heads in his sleeves, and is ready to start to refining and melting the 2 things in the Taoist book. It is a dual purpose. Don't delay Cui Dongshan's chat with the millet grains. Say it, you must take this credit. Xiaomi Li stood up, ran all the way to the table and asked curiously, is the things the old master gave us always valuable? Julien smiled and nodded, "It's valuable. The 2 scroll heads are quite old if it's just that picture." The millet grains were soaring and he laughed and said, "The old man is an old leader and the old things he gave are always valuable." The little girl in black did not patronize and was happy. She looked over the mountain road, scratched her face and whispered, "I don't know when I will be a guest again. The temper of the old master is very good." Rao is Cui Dongshan, who has to be speechless. This old master of the East China Sea has a good temper, that is recognized by the mountain. Millet grains retracted their gaze, lay on the table and said with a smile, "Old chef, I have done a good job again. When the good people and mountain masters return home from the capital, you can help us make a good meal. It must be better than the best. It's more delicious, don't you know, can't it?" Xiaomi Li didn't even ask how much the credit was, as if her little head, melon seeds, could not think of these things at all. Julien smiled and nodded, "No problem. In fact, on the night ship, Wu Shuangjiang also gave an extra set of zhou rice grains, a set of 1 qing to supply zhou rice grains, which are all things Wu Shuangjiang carried with him, and the vision of the Sui Qugong Palace Master was so high in the world. They are all famous and you can imagine their appearance. The 3 magic weapons are invaluable and each has a magical effect." Back to Luapa Mountain, the millet grains were immediately sent out, and the Qibao mud, which was known as 1 or 2 colored mud and 1 caddy of rain money, was given to Sister Nuanshu. Then gave the ancient inkstone with the inscription Xinxian Cave, and a pair of pocket dragons to Jingqing. As for the green bamboo brush, there is a line of small seals and the chest is full of bamboo. Was given by millet grains to Wei Shanjun, who was so poor that he could only spend nights and banquets and earn red envelopes. Cui Dongshan exhaled, "It's done." Julien was surprised, "So fast." Cui Dongshan grinned and said, "It's not too fast for Brother Dafeng to look at those fairy pictures, just flip a few pages and it's done. Anyway, Jing Dafeng is not there, just say it." Julien smiled and said, "After all, he is still a young and strong guy who can pancakes on his ass. If he is replaced by Wei Shanjun, he will definitely be able to turn to the end." Weibo was not there anyway. Fortunately, the millet grains did not hear this, and was planning to write a menu for the old cook. Thinking of a dinner table full of dishes and plates, people don't know how to put the chopsticks there first. The more they think about it, the more greedy Hurry Up wiped his mouth. Cui Dongshan took out the complete road map with the shaft head, gently placed it on the table and smiled, "The old master of the world really knows the world and the world is unparalleled. After Daotu is refined, purple air is lingering and clouds rise, as if a table is a world of Daofa, and the vision of the sun and the moon is faintly visible. On the top of the mountains, there is no 2 days and there is a month in the tens of thousands of trees." In the heart of Cui Dongshan and Julien, they just listened to the old master sneer, "Pick up people's teeth." Cui Dongshan pinched Daoju with both hands, meditating silently in his heart, a book on the table, fleeting, and the next moment, the whole desolate mountain boundary is covered with purple air. Weibo shrank the mountains and rivers, and immediately came from Piyun Mountain to the tableside of Luapa Mountain. Weibo's heart was shaken and he used Shanjin's life and supernatural powers, looked around and his vision he was like being in a sea of purple clouds, and at the same time he even felt a breath of victory over the great road, which made Dang Tang Beiwa Dashin feel uncomfortable, and the momentum of this victory is getting heavier and heavier. Weibo smiled bitterly, "Could it be that I can only show up in the future? On the edge of the fallen mountain boundary walk to this point? Monarch Daiwa Mountain walking on his own side is inconvenient and he has to walk on foot. It is estimated that the joke that spreads out is more laughable than the joke at night." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "It's okay. I will set up a gate on the mountain and under the mountain to make sure that Mr. Wei Shan goes back and forth at will." The higher the realm of the mountain and water gods and the cultivators, the more uncomfortable they are. Even if the Qixin and his like were aware of it, they would not be struggling like Weibo. Moreover, this Taoist book cannot be in a state of being unfolded all the time, otherwise the Tao Qi will be scattered, and it will be more self-gathering and replenishment than the aura of the heavens and the earth, and the mountains and rivers will be able to make ends meet. Weibo didn't care about this. He took a seat and asked, "What's the matter?" The old master of Donghai was sitting in Brother Weiss' position just now. Cui Dongshan shook his snow-white sleeves and said with a smile, "As for the inside story, I won't say much, I don't know better. There is a cloud in Buddhism and the proposal is by Yunhuan Li." Weibo stood up in silence and changed seats. At the top of the cloud mountain the old Guan looked up and saw that the mountain monarch surnamed Wei is still quite interesting and then quietly left. Cui Dongshan said, "Since the weather is about to change we should plan ahead and make plans early. Anyway, Weibo is not an outsider. As long as those illusory avenues of luck are not involved, there is nothing to say. Zhu Lian nodded and said, you must not have the heart to harm others, and you must not have the heart to defend against others. Before, Qin Pingan targeted the swordsman Pei Min, an ascendant sword repairman, and later in the night sailing battle, he dealt with Wu Shuangjiang's 14 realms. Now it seems that it is necessary. Far away Zouzi. Swordsmanship Pei Min Jianxia Lu Kai. Closer, the great sword fairy by Chang who had fallen short of Luzhou and Beiju. The behind-the-scenes forces including Han Yushu. The rivers and lakes are sinister, treacherous, unpredictable, and making friends is often making enemies. Cui Dongshan said, the only thing missing now is the realm of the husband. The most powerful attack on Luapa Mountain is on the top of the mountain. The mountain Song Yuzhang has been transferred to Chiduan Mountain by the Dali court, and opened a separate mountain shrine and temple. The former site of the mountain temple on the top of the Luapa Mountain has not been demolished and reconstructed. The original appearance is maintained, but the plaque has been taken off. Cui Dongshan's a golden thunder pond was set up along the white jade railing to enshrine the sword fairy picture from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It was originally from the upside-down mountain Jingjian Pavilion, and was later handed over to Qin Pingan by the old sword fairy. On the side of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, those sword immortals in the posture of heroic spirits have accompanied young hidden officials for many years, fending off enemies together, and guarding half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. In addition, Luapa Mountain also has a set of sword formations born out of Taiping Mountain in Tonggishao, but it has not yet been completed so far and can be used as an aid in the future. Zhu Lian said, with the temper of the sun, the sword formation scroll will definitely be returned to Feixingcheng. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, don't worry, with the temper of the teacher, you will definitely not accept it. Moreover, in the long run the picture scroll will remain in the Luapa Mountain. For Feixingcheng, it is a cost-effective business with a steady profit. Xiaomi Li nodded and said, don't worry, we are good people and we will listen to Mrs. Shanju anyway. Zhu Lian shook his head and smiled, wrong, as long as you encounter real major events, Miss Ning will still listen to the sun. Xiaomi Li thought for a while, it seems to be a lass. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, even without the sword fairy formation now in Aquarius Island, if we don't take the initiative to take the initiative, others should burn incense. Took out a folding fan of Yuzhu, Cui Dongshan gently fanned, while writing to convince people with morality, while writing that he refused to accept and killed him. Weibo said, I have already helped out the matter of Luopashan not accepting disciples, but it doesn't seem to be very useful, and the effect is very average. More and more people will come here in the future. Cui Dongshan helped the millet grains fan and smiled and said, normally, everyone is curious to see flowers in the fog. In the end, we still have to talk about chances if we can climb the mountain. Who can knock the seeds of millet grains? Oh, yes. Millet grains sat on the bench, shook his little feet, the breeze was blowing and he pulled the cotton satchel, laughing. Wei Wei asked with a smile, Millet, have you thought about it, what are you going to give in return? The green bamboo pen presented by Millet Grains is of great significance to Wei Bo, and he won't change it with a half-soldier. Chen Lingjun had previously escorted Millet Grains to Piyun Mountain, and now he goes to the bamboo forest from time to time, but in the summer and autumn he said to see if there are any bamboo shoots to dig. Xiaomi Li shook his head and said, no need, just a polite hammer, Mr. Wei Shan will see you outside. Wei Bo stood up, touched the head of the millet grain and left. The millet grains went back to the small bamboo chair to watch the door, and let the old cook and the big white goose continue to talk about business. Cui Dongshan wrapped his arms in his sleeves and said, the old master seems to be treating you with admiration. Julian laughed off. According to legend, Lu Qin has 5 dreams, each with unreasonable avenue manifestations. Among them is the real bones of Taoism, and the scholar Jing Chang of Confucianism. In addition, there are 7 mysterious mines, wooden chickens, trees, moles, kunping, cardinals, buzzards and butterflies. Among them, Yu Jini, who was the first to cultivate immortality in Uwafuti, was the wooden chicken who was dumbfounded. Uwafuti's pictures scroll 4 people, although according to the definition of xianxia, they are all genuine and pure martial arts, but the 4 have their own emphasis. Sui right side, perseverance, directly gave up martial arts, turned to mountaineering and became sword repairers. Wei Xian never intended to reach the top of martial arts, preferring to be on the battlefield and to be an official, the biggest official. God knows if this guy who claims to drink a lot of alcohol will directly find a site in the future, such as the Tongya Island broken in the mountains and rivers, and become the founding emperor again. Lu Baixiang seems to be the least ambitious compared to Sui Right Side and Wei Xian. As for Zhu Lian, in the eyes of outsiders, he is the one who does not seek improvement. Cui Dongshan closed the folding fan and looked up at the sky. He by Yujing. Zhu Lian asked, the general idea that the old master said before? The first sentence is easy to guess, the last one? There is no Qin Xingdu in the world who can open up the mountain with the sword. Cui Dongshan shook his head. God knows. Zhu Lian glanced at the sky and smiled. Forget it, don't talk about these annoying things, you can only drink and talk about Fengyue tonight. Sunlight makes paper, the night is like ink, the world is polished and the thoughts become words. Cui Dongshan took out 2 pots of wine, threw a pot to Zhu Lian and drank each. Zhu Lian was drinking. I must be Lu Qin? Can't Lu Qin be me? Qin Lingjun returned to Qilong Alley, and directly asked for a pot of wine from Brother Jia. When he arrived at a large bowl, he drank it all in one gulp. Qin Lingjun sat cross-legged on the bench and said in a low voice, Brother Jia, don't you know, I saw 3 outsiders today. The old fairy Jia asked, did you fight? Have you ever taken advantage of it? Do you need my brother to help you find a place? Regarding lip service, our brothers use reason to convince people, and there is no one who can't. Qin Lingjun hesitated and gave up the idea of divulging the secrets of heaven. Firstly, this matter should not be concealed. Secondly, it was said by the most holy master. It seems that as long as those key words are involved, there is no way to speak even if it is curved. It's impossible to come and go. Qin Lingjun sighed, it was a pity on earth, wiped his forehead and finally got a new sweat. The old fairy Jia was shocked and he came directly to the idiot. Qin Lingjun smiled bitterly, just raised a bowl and sat down on the floor before sitting and talking. The patriarch of Sanjiao seemed to be standing on the street. As soon as he thought of this, Qin Lingjun was sweating and had to change the subject. Chief Zhou is not on the mountain, he is still a bit lonely. The guy is rich, interesting, free, read, drink and brag. Based on Jiang Shangzhen's sentence, if you have to work hard to practice, would you not bully someone like me and a genius like Lingjun? Qin Lingjun was willing to admire the chief worshipper and agree with him. In addition, Jiang Shangzhen's wine table talks, a set of sets, very chewy, more powerful than any other dishes. Useless is a scholar, but the most difficult thing is the scholar's failure. The prodigal son will not change his head. The most pitiful is the prodigal son. What are the blooming willows, the beautiful scenes, the Yingyan dance and the powder cave? In fact, these are not important. The key is that Jiang Shangzhen slapped his chest to make sure that he will arrange for the 3 brothers to break into the hero's grave when he arrives at the Cloud Cave blessed land. I never thought of a small riding dragon lane, there are 2 heroes, Jingqing brother and Jiao old god. So Jiang Shangzhen learned everything, saying that Qilong Alley is definitely a treasure of geomantic omen. He learned the law of palm and has a long life. He spent a lot of money to buy 3 houses in Qilong Alley. What kind of ability is money? It's willing to spend money. Jiang Shang really lived longer than that man and he was much more generous. It was meaningless to say that the competition for fame and fortune other than food and clothing is always petty. So at the wine table, the chief of the week threw all 3 sets of keys to the blind old Taoist priest, saying that they were all his own brothers. In the future, Brother Jiao will help increase the popularity of the warm house. I will not talk about them. Money is no longer money and it hurts brotherhood for nothing. The old fairy Jiao was flushed with drinks, his face was awe-inspiring, he took the key, waved his hand and talked about money between brothers. The blind old Taoist took the 2 apprentices and moved to a new house that same day. The expensive furnishings in the house are estimated to be the same as the generals of Dali capital. He stood at the door, dressed in a snow-white robe of the fallen mountain palm. Qin Lingjun immediately put his foot off the bench and shouted, Sister Changming. Old immortal Jia also immediately put down the wine bowl in his hand and raised his subconsciously. Seeing that the brother Lingjun did not get up, but did not put down his ass, he did not hesitate to hang his in the air and bend down slightly. As for whether the woman could see this scene, the old gods don't care. Where does this evening blessing come from? In addition to the unique insight of the mountain owner, he was singled out in the vast sea of people, and he was a strong old hero, and he also relied on this kind of sincere treatment that is compatible with the road of Luapa Mountain. I see that the high is first short. On one end, the old smiled and said, Zhanglu came to the cold house and the expensive feet are on the cheap ground. It is really a celebration of Chaimin, the flourishing of the house, the bitterness without alcohol and wine, if you don't mind the long life of the palm. Long Life squinted and smiled, mind? The old fairy Jia changed his speech. The palm is fast and the people talk quickly, and teach people to save worry and effort. Changming said, "If you block the way you have a snack." The old fairy Jia said solemnly, "I have no shirk. Minger will go out in person." Previously, there was no mention of his name on the side of Luapa Mountain. It was only to let the disciple Zhao Dengao work on this matter. Old Xianxia held it back. Otherwise, he only talked about the ability to deal with people. Jia Xing thinks he is in Luapa Mountain and can be ranked the least. Fifth, receiving salary in Luapashenye. Jia Xing naturally has no burden to say that only taking money but not taking care of it, but the big white goose that haunts, and now the chief executive who smiles to everyone. Wife. I really can't help him lie down and enjoy the blessing every day. With the lifting of the ban on the Hauran Xianxia Shanshwadibro, and the Jinghua Shuiyu of Xinjiang Mountain, people from all walks of life who visited Luapashan came in swarms, coming from all directions of the mountains and rivers. 1 to 2, the entire Longzhou boundary, big and small inns, are overcrowded. Of course, there are more people who come here to watch the excitement, and it may not be just what you want. For example, the genealogical masters of various roads, the Beiwepiyun Mountain, which was originally a tourist attraction, now there is one more Luapa Mountain born out of the sky, plus the gods of the mountains and rivers in Longzhou are not low in the gods of the Ijo landscape genealogy. I believe that Luapa Mountain will soon face the noisy scene of visitors like crucian carp crossing the river. I admire the chi trainers of the sword immortal, and the martial arts masters who want to learn martial arts skills with those martial arts masters. There must be many mountain fairies who want to open the mirror at the gate of Luapa Mountain. Among them, there are also martial arts masters from various countries who want to ask Pei Qian about the boxing. Of course, no one comes here to win punches, they just compete and ask for advice. There are mountains and rivers and there are so many martial arts, but Pei Qian is one of the 4 great masters of Wu Ping. He asked her if he still wanted to win. Was he crazy? Go and ask the monster monks who gave Grandmaster Pei a few punches to open the flowers on the battlefield with the capital. Do they agree? Because of the previous fairy discussions, Qin Pingan said that in the last 20 years, Luapashan would not accept disciples. Therefore something more happened. On the Luapashan side, someone needs to be responsible for blocking the road and inform all the outsiders of this matter, especially if they need to stop them from climbing without permission, and use Luapashan as a place to enjoy the scenery. There are only 2 roads leading to Luapa Mountain. In addition to the mountain road on the side of Huaihuang County, there are also roads extending from Hongzhou Town and Chiduan Mountain. For the time being responsible for blocking the road, there are Yunzi, Baixian, Zhao Shuxia and Ming, and Zhao Dengao, the disciple of the blind old Taoist Jia Sheng. Doing this kind of thing is also an experience. There are Zhang Lv Changming and Jian Xiu Chui Wei in the dark to prevent accidents. Only Baixian is purely on the pole to join in the fun. Anyway, Pei Qian just happened not to be in Luapa Mountain recently. Baixian is now more familiar with the left guardian of Qilong Lane. Often squat on the ground and ask if you want to eat? That's the one. As long as the hero threatens to challenge Pei Qian, Baixian is prepared to not fall behind, and all are carefully recorded, name and nickname, hometown, martial arts state. Qin Lingjun did not interfere with this for the first time ever. Nuanshu and Xia Miliang were very surprised. Of course, Qin Lingjun was pretending to be an expert, his mother, a mixture of fish and dragons, and God knows if there was any expert who beat him to death. After all, in a huge river and lake, it is impossible to meet a good brother like Busy and Qin Qinglu. The rivers and lakes outside are difficult to mix, and it is not enough to rely on boldness. On the road to practice, there are either wild horses or pigs out of the pen one by one. Today was a big table for dinner, it was lively. It is still the old rule that cannot be beaten by thunder. If Chen Pingan is not on the mountain, the main bench will be empty and must be left to the mountain owner. Julien, Chui Dongshan, Miyu, Qin Wanshu, Millet Grains, Qin Lingjun, Zhang Jiaxin. There is also Bai Xian who likes to come here to eat and drink. Wei Wenlong, who doesn't show up very much, is not a cultivator of Jin Danki. He doesn't need to use grains. It's not how the god of wealth of the fallen mountain is so withdrawn. He is obsessed with settling accounts. Every book is just his daughter-in-law. As for Zhao Shuxia and Zhao Dengao, they walk back to the town every day, taking turns to watch the night on the road, one mountain master's biography, one named Offering, and the 2 have a good relationship now. They are obviously very different styles from Qin Lingjun and Bai Xian. Qin Lingjun was suffocating at the dinner table. Old cook, I heard that when you were young, you were still the only beautiful man in 10 miles and 8 villages? Julien, every chopsticks no matter what the food will chew slowly, so barely ugly. Qin Lingjun smiled and said, then you are still a bachelor. When you were young your eyes were too high and you didn't have a satisfied girl. In the end you can only be like Brother Dauphin? Julien smiled and said, forget that you are older than me? Qinling all eats flat. Millet Grains raised her palms to her mouth and asked Nuanshu's sister quietly, how old is Jingqing? The girl in the pink skirt looked at the boy in Qingyi, shook her head and whispered, I haven't asked, I don't know. Chen Lingjun patted the table, stupid girl, coveting my beauty, right? I was caught upright, haha. As a result, Miyu slapped Miyu on the back of the head. Chen Lingjun bowed his head and pulled the rice in the bowl. The sword immortal Mi dared to provoke him, he was a little depressed. Cui Wei is a sword repairer in the Yuaning realm of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. As a result, he saw his grandfather like his grandson on Mi Yes side. Chen Lingjun felt that something was wrong before. Later, from the well-informed brother Jia, he heard about that Mi stopped the waste, coupled with some deeds of the old Dragon City battlefield. Chen Lingjun's liver trembled, and the result was scared that he did not dare to find Miyu as his brother. Zhu Lian glanced at Zhang Jiazhen. Reluctant to speak, but there is often a smile in his eyes. When he came Shonen Lang. Now he is a young man who can grow his beard. Standing with Jiang Chu of the same age, they seem to be 10 years old. Jiang Shangzhen actually went to him in private and said that he, the chief worshipper, can practice spiritual practice with a little money. With good luck, there is hope in this life to be among the middle 5 realms of Dongfu realm, and then stop there. Even if luck is average, there is still a chance to get a good trainer from 4 realms and 5 realms. If you feel uncomfortable, you can treat it as borrowing money. Later, relying on the salary of Luopashan, you can repay the money slowly. But Zhang Jiazhen still did not agree and had her own plan, and finally asked Chief Zhou a few questions unexpectedly. 2 Jiazi time, maybe one of them needs to be used to practice with great concentration, the years of the cultivator's mountain dwelling, dealing with the changes of cold and heat, the circulation of the 4 seasons, it has a completely different look and feel from ordinary masters. Anyone sitting in a meditation retreat can take days or even months of time. Zhang Jiazhen followed Mr. Wei, fascinated. Even if he only learned a little, this account is not difficult to calculate. In addition, there is an account which is not confused and the truth is false. Why should Zhang Shangzhen help him? Naturally, it was Mr. Chen's face. Besides money, it was Mr. Chen's favor. Maybe Sect Master Jiang is indeed rich and powerful, and he can ignore it at all, but Zhang Jiazhen himself has to be more truthful. Mr. Wei didn't like to reason, but when he led him in the door on the first day, he had a heart-to-heart remark with Zhang Jiazhen, saying that we are in the business of accounting. The most important thing is not how smart. It's honesty and conscience. Before Jiang Shangzhen went down the mountain to the wild world, he found Zhu Lian and said with a smile, the mountain master is picking the treasure. It is not that there is a Zhang Jiazhen in Luopa Mountain who can earn a few more gods, but a Luopa Mountain with Zhang Jiazhen will be more like Luopa Mountain. Because what Zhang Jiazhen and Jiang Shangzhen asked about was whether he could become a mountain ghost and mountain in the future and stay in the mountain for a long time. Do more small things within your power. If it is not feasible, just let the fate. If it is feasible, then he will start saving money from the same day. If the money is not enough, he will definitely borrow from Chief Zhou without any embarrassment. When we were walking at night together, Jiang Shangzhen looked at the bright-eyed young man, who was no longer a poor boy from the Great Wall of Jianxi, Mr. Xiaofeng, as if saying, Mr. Qin brought me here from my hometown, then I would try my best not to let him. Mr. Qin was disappointed. This was a matter of course and it was not hard at all. Jiang Shangzhen handed over a jug of wine. Zhang Jiazhen said that she had to read a few account books when she went back, so she stopped drinking. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said that if he didn't drink too much, he would be fine and refreshing. Zhang Jiazhen accepted the pot of wine. Zhang Jiazhen went back to the room, looked through the account books under the lamp, did not drink, just planned to take it, and occasionally was really tired, rubbed his brows, glanced at the hip flask on the table, held back a smile and said to herself, Zhang Jiazhen, now bullish. Oh, this is the drink that Sect Master Jiang personally gave you. I didn't know that Sect Master Jiang was sitting on the wall with arms around his chest, squinting and smiling without alcohol in his hands like drinking alcohol. Lupper Mountain is time to hold the mirror flower water moon of its own mountain. Zhu Lian smiled and said, when the sun returns home, let's discuss the beautiful things which mountain to do, who will do what, we need to discuss it carefully. Bai Shenqi smiled and said, discuss a hammer and let me day Jiangxian stop over there. The entire Aquarius Island fairies are going to commit nympho, that smashed fairy money. Miyu shook his chopsticks, compared to the mountain owner, it's still far behind. Bai Xian said with white eyes, I said you are better than Master Hermit? Follow me here. Miyu kept smiling and gave Bai Xian a chopstick dish. "If you can talk so well, eat more." Bai Xian sneered and said, "What, you learn from that money? Do you have a grudge?" Cui Dongshan laughed. Bai Xian immediately took a chopstick to Cui Dongshan, and asked curiously, "Apart from hidden officer, is there anyone Pei Qian is afraid of?" Cui Dongshan said, "Yes, Guizhuzhou." Bai Xian was stunned for a long time. Of course he had heard of Guizhuzhou in his hometown, a famous existence. She seemed to have entered the summer palace as a hidden official sword repairer. After a meal, Nuanshu and Xiaomi Li helped to clean up the dishes, but in the end the old cook was alone, and the two little girls were not asked to help. They put on aprons and washed them in the stove alone. Julien cleaned up, took off his apron, walked out of the stove and smiled. Everyone is a book writer in their own life, and at the same time looking at others is turning the book. Maybe the world takes us very lightly, but we take ourselves too seriously. A ferry slowly entered the land of Dali capital. Two monks from the earthly branch, Song Su and Yu Yufeng, boarded the ship. Song Jisun put down the books in his hand, walked out of the house and came to the bow. Song Shushu clasped his fist and said, "Dali worships Song Su, and I board the ship to see the prince." Yu Yu clasped his fists and smiled. "Yu Yu has seen the prince." Song Jisun smiled and said, "Is this a posture of business affairs?" Song Su helplessly said, "My nephew has seen the emperor." Song Jisun said, "As long as I take off the robe of the feudal king, I will only be a commoner of Huaihuan County. You don't need to be nervous when you travel through the capital." Song Su shook his head, still insisting on his own opinion. "Uncle Emperor, this still won't work." Song Jisun turned his head to look at the little girl from the Yu family of Xianghu Kingdom, and smiled, "Find a drink for yourself. You can find as much as you can." In the early years of the feudal mansion, Song Jisun was in a line of 10 people with this group of earthly branches. Neither wooing nor alienating, just stop. Yu Yu palms with boxing, his face is full of joy. Song Su, the emperor, is really a kind and honest man, but unfortunately he has not married and had children yet, and I don't know which woman will be cheaper in the future. Since she had obtained the decree of the feudal lord, she went over and over again. Song Jisun turned his head and said to a monk who accompanied the army, "Tell me to go down. The ferry is temporarily hovering here. Don't hurry." The monk nodded and left silently. Song Jisun lay on the railing, and Song Shubi respectfully stood aside. A prince and a prince, together overlooking the Song's mountains and rivers below the ferry. Song Jisun asked casually, "You seem to have matured a little more at this meeting. Have you figured it out?" Song Su nodded. Song Jisun didn't say much about it. Even in a family, as long as there are too many people, the head of the family treats children as well, and there will be big and small biases. What is eccentricity? It means that in the same rain, less rain falls on your own fields than people. There are some comforts from others, even if it is out of good intentions, it will be better if it is like nothing. Just as the listener must drink a large pot of bitter water alone, the speaker puts some sugar in his mouth. After that it will only teach people to feel more bitter. Now the ruling and the opposition. The current Majesty's Wenji Wugong is regarded as the best of the Song dynasty emperors. Song Jisun smiled and said, "I just figured it out by myself and I brought you a gift. It is 2 ink stones, both of which are imitated. It is said that they were circulated from the old Zhuing royal family and are not worth a few gods. The 2 ancient ink stones, imitating the 36-hole sky ink stone and the 72 blessed land ink stones, are filled with red sandalwood inlaid jade boxes with beautiful inkstone bags, handwritten, and official script inscriptions. Each inkstone has 36 stone eyes and 712, make the eye column. As Song Jisun said, it's not valuable but it's a good sign. Since Song Su decides to practice with peace of mind and become on the mountain, Song Jisun, the emperor uncle, gave this to his nephew. It is very appropriate. If Song Su has not figured it out, it can also be used as a kind reminder. Song Jisun asked casually, "Have you met Qin Pingon and dealt with?" Song Su smiled bitterly and said, "I have suffered a lot. If I can't beat it, I can't calculate it." The elder Song Jisun was a bit unkind. Instead of comforting his nephew, he gloated a bit unabashedly. He patted the railing, squinted his eyes and smiled, "No surprise." Song Su asked curiously, "The relationship between Huang Shu and Mr. Qin, a neighbor for many years, seems to be more complex?" Song Jisun nodded and said, "It's hard to say a word. I haven't become a close friend and fortunately I haven't become an enemy. A reminder, if there is no way, don't provoke Qin Pingon. Most people are too poor to eat and give food and drink, just being content. Qin Pingon is not the same. Every time Lin Yuan envy fish, he will immediately retreat and form a net. It is better to learn to fish than to get it. He learns things faster than Lu Xianying, but is more stable because of learning. Slow probably because I think it's hard to come by, so I cherish it even more, love the new and never tire of the old. Such people, if they are enemies, are actually terrifying. Song Su rubbed his cheeks vigorously. Indeed, Mr. Qin attacked the enemy with endless methods, and the magical powers were so complicated that it was incredible. The fairy has another guest. Zhao Yu, the right servant of the Li Ministry. Song Su is a junior, and Zhao Yu is an old friend of classmates from the same hometown. The Emperor, His Majesty, is still very measured. Song Jisun smiled and waved. Zhao Mamudu, it's been a long time since I saw you. When will we meet again in the year of huffing between clouds and water? Zhao Yao saluted and then asked, don't play chess and talk about things while playing chess? Song Jisun smiled and said, no more, you are now on the mountain with successful cultivation, thoughtful and prosperous. I will definitely lose, and will not give you a chance to find a place. Zhao Yu suddenly said, Song Jisun, I didn't misunderstand the wrong person. You are indeed amazing. Since he was young, Zhao Yu, who was born in a wealthy family on Fulu Street, has admired Song Jisun in a mess. When the two were studying together under Mr. Chi's school, whether it was playing chess or reading interpretation, they were better than Zhao Yao. So Zhao Ye's attitude towards Song Jisun in Ni Ping Lane is somewhat similar to Qin Ping's attitude towards Lu Xianying. Song Jisun patted Zhao Yu on the shoulder and smiled and said, is it better to praise me or to praise your own vision? You can do it, there is no officialdom in these years. I can talk more than when I was a kid. Zhao Yu laughed and said, you can do two things with one stone and everyone is happy. Song Su was a little surprised. Although Zhao Yao is a young official in the center, he does treat people kindly. He has a very good reputation in the Dali court. The only flaw is that he lacks a clear body of imperial examination fame. Make contributions on the battlefield. The carp jumps through the dragon gate. Jinmao Cave, Wild Fox Meditation. Kusong Su always thinks that Zhao Yu is an extremely proud and arrogant man. Like a lonely cloud and wild crane that only stops and rests in that temple. One day, it will row out the clouds and shake its wings in the blue sky. Nowadays, the ruling and opposition parties are all curious about the fact that King Song Mu and Zhao Yu of the Ministry of Rites can be regarded as direct disciples of Wensheng's line. Song Jisun joked, I have seen your Uncle Qin? How are you doing? Zhao Shi smiled and said, not bad, very harmonious. Leaving the alley where Zhou Haijing was temporarily staying, Qin Pingan was unsteady, raised his foot and stomped on the ground, and then took the next step, making it much easier. Qin Pingan raised a hand, slightly rusty, but still instantly gathered the aftermath of Taoism. The self who stayed in the Howran world is the same 14th realm. Therefore, Qin Pingan is just such a simple stomping action. For Dei capital, it is a stormy weather. Qin Pingan glanced at the direction of the Jingqing Qingtian supervisor. He must have been aware of it, and of course there is also the imitation by Yujing who accompanied the capital. The Qingtian supervisory office in the Dali capital city is a heavily guarded forbidden area. It is said that the level of martial law is second only to Miyagi and the imperial tombs. There are not many people, and the total number of officials from various academies is less than 200. Among the many yamen in Dali, it is the most clouded and foggy place without mountains or dew. It is mostly passed down from generation to generation, and the sons inherit their father's business. All officials of the Qingtian supervisor shall not be transferred to other officials. If there are vacancies, they will be filled in the Qingtian supervisor level by level. Non-special decree of the imperial court shall not be easily promoted or resigned. Therefore, it is an iron rice bowl that cannot be thrown away. It has two meanings. Without outsiders vying for it, you can't let it go. Although all officials of the Qingtian supervisor are in the Dali capital, they are actually isolated from the world and have little contact with the outside world. Every time they go out, they need to be reviewed and reported by the internal and the Ministry of Etiquette. Each time they go out, they are specially made. Guandi once used needs to be destroyed and then recorded. The people inside dare not make friends with clinging officials, and the Beijing officials outside dare not deal with the Qingtian supervisor. If it's a little bit cross-boundary, it's easy to throw off the official hat, or the kind where the head falls along with it. Qin Pingan walked slowly in an alley. The same rice raises hundreds of people. Looking at this vast world, it seems that everyone is blind and touching the elephant. Different fields of view and different angles will result in different results. Pure martial arts, as far as the field of vision can be, many real objects are all dazzling, and the cultivator can vaguely see the circulation of the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth. in addition to the spirit of the gods. As Qin Ping's thoughts fluctuated, the world seemed to have undergone subtle changes. The closer to the direction of the Great Wall of Sword Qi or the Wild World, the current realm temporarily borrowed from Lu Qin will decay faster. When the same person came, there was still a distinction between primary and secondary. This is reasonable. Otherwise, by relying on the 14-realm cultivation base rushing to the barren world, wouldn't it be equivalent to creating two 14 realms out of thin air? The Saint of Rights was at the Renyun building. Why did you agree to try again? Have you already seen this step along the upstream and downstream of that long river of time? Then Li Xing hopes to take this opportunity to do what? If the saints of rituals do it casually and have no purpose, then Qin Pingan, who possesses this method, can actually do many things such as going back to his hometown of Luapa Mountain, or traveling far to the north at the cost of falling down Luzhou or Tonggishao. Broadcast, the novel app I'm using recently. App, both Android and iPhone support. Qin Pingan suddenly had a strong thought. Stepped out of Dali Capital and appeared directly in the backyard of Yang's pharmacy. As a result, I saw a young Taoist priest. Daozu smiled and asked, "Since childhood alone looking after the stars of the past, is it hard to work?" Sword of Coming Chapter 854. The juvenile Dao Tong stood on the steps, and the old man Yang from the drugstore often sat there holding a dry tobacco rod, swallowing clouds and fog. Standing under the eaves, Qin Pingan hit a well-mannered chief inspector, silent. It's not that Qin Pingan is playing mystery, but that he really doesn't know how to answer. The main reason is that Li Lu is involved, so he has to bite the bullet and get bored. The young Dao Tong shook his sleeves and returned to a Confucian polite, smiling without saying a word. The boy sat on the steps and stretched out a hand. "Sit anywhere, we are all guests, so don't worry too much. I am a passerby and so are you temporarily but not necessarily in the future." Qin Pingan moved to sit on the bench and sat opposite the young man on the patio where he returned to the hall by Four Waters. There is no need to guess the identity of the young Taoist boy in front of him. Once riding a bull to pass through the barren world, he would hit the old throne great demon back to the bottom of the ancient well with a single finger, leaving an indelible mark on his opponent for thousands of years. It even made the great ancestor ascend far away from the sky, and dare not show up. Rao is Daochang, son of Daxuandu Temple, such a master of Taoism who will greet the true invincibility every 3 chasing 5. It is rumored that when he traveled the vast world, he and Bai Yi and others often mentioned the Dao ancestor who founded Bai Yujing, the same as Yu Rongyin vowed to guarantee that the best fight in the world is our Qingming world. On Deus's side, pretending to understand and pretending to be confused is meaningless. As for pretending to be confused, it is even more laughable and generous. Dao ancestor glanced at the 14 scenes of Qin Pingan and said with a smile, "The word ritual is difficult to have both reason and reason. The little master is still very powerful." Then Daozu said, "You can accommodate the realm of Lu Xun with very little dispersal, not only because of the saints of etiquette in Lu Xun, but also because of your own empty boat. It has a lot to do with Dao. Collecting the virtual, the empty heart is also the heart, and the empty one is wide. Just say that among the people you know, Zhoumi, Chuiyang, Qi Jingchun, Zheng Juzhong, and Wu Shuangjiang are all similar scholars. To put it in a more common way, one person you can eat a lot on an empty stomach. Why can a Taoist person be different from ordinary people? What is meant by entering a mountain to cultivate immortals? It is nothing more than cutting a mountain into a house, moving out the 7 emotions, 6 desires, distracting thoughts and turbidity of the ordinary master, and bringing the heaven and earth aura and the opportunity with merit and blessing. Move in. Sitting in a blue shirt like a Mongolian boy who has just read and read. Nowadays the mountain monks in the world, whether they are in the ascending realm or the 14th realm, dare not call Zhoumi by name, for fear of revealing the secret of the world to the sky. Daozu smiled. This guy seems to be kept in the dark and it is normal. How can one be recognized by the sword holder when he was young? 2 seniors also stared at him. Qin Pingan naturally broke his head and couldn't think of himself. After so many years of traveling on the road, it was not only Bing's Hus night tour, but also a lantern during the day. It's just that Dao Zu is not in a hurry to explain the matter and asks, "You have been close to Buddhism since you were a child, and you have quite a lot of experience about the affirmation and negation, so you must know the 3 sentences?" Qin Pingan nodded. "Buddha said that the world is not a world, hence the name of the world." Daozu smiled and said, "Good words, but let's talk more about it. Let me give you an example. The truth is that the sky is empty, the example is the post station ferry so that the listener can have a foothold. Otherwise, the expert can reason and ride a crane to Yangzhou. Chen Pingan said, Su Zi has poems, Danzhou Yunxia Qinjiang Chao, you can't hate it in every possible way, and there is nothing to do when you reach Yuan, Danzhou Yunxia Qinjiang Chao. Dao Zhu said, speak again. Chen Pingan replied, Dao can be very Taoist. Dao Zhu smiled and said, no wonder Su Zi gave a copybook which is more enjoyable than Lu Qi. No wonder Sun Guanzhu added blue eyes to you. When he returned to his hometown he would say that Howren has a little Taoist in the world and he is a wonderful person. Chen Pingyan was a little embarrassed, his reputation was already full of the streets before he went to Qingming World? Does this count as the fragrance of wine? Are you afraid of the deep alley? Dao Zhu asked, have you ever thought about why your two brothers dared to catch turtles in the urn? 10,000 years ago, the three of us could not completely solve the legacy of the old heavenly court ruins. It's even more difficult. But now that the three of us are going to go out of the way, it's not as good as sparse to prevent water control. Cui Yang and Qi Jingchun are not short-sighted people. Why don't you understand? Think about it again. When the public is ascending to the sky, what is he waiting for? To make up for the lack of God's position is similar to the Qingtian supervisor of our secular dynasty. There is always a carrot and a hole. Dao Zhu said with a smile, can't Zhomi just wait for the three of us to block the door, right? Chen Pingan shook his head and said, the juniors don't understand. Because there is something in the world, Zhomi has lost all secrets. Dao Zhu raised his arm and pointed at Chen Pingan, it's you, the bird in the cage. The heavens are thorough and the earth is Chen Pingan. There is a tug of war between the hearts and minds, which ultimately determines who is more capable of becoming a brand new and stronger one. Fallen mountain? The soul belongs to the sky and the soul belongs to the earth. Of course, Zhomi must have its own means, find another way, make a new look, seek a solution and will never stand still. Dao Zhu said, so Qingtong Tianjun left a letter to you asking if you are full. Chen Pingan instantly tightened his heartstrings, clenched his fists empty, put them on his knees, took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice, in the one? Dao Zhu smiled and said, Qi Jingchun really put a heavy burden on your shoulders early. Chen Pingan suddenly enlightened. Why would a Zhou Zi who has done his best, start targeting an orphan in Mud Bottle Alley so early? Zhou Zi's existence had long since broken through life and death and detached himself from good and evil. When he was young he went up to the mountain to collect medicine. When he was blocked by mountain torrents, Old Man Yang later taught a method of breathing and breathing. In exchange, Chen Pingan created a dry tobacco rod. Returning from the capital of the Great Sui dynasty, he presented a flying sword, named 15 by Chen Pingan. Old Man Yang's reason was that someone did not eat dumplings during the new year. With the addition of the Feijian embryo, whose original name is Xia Fengdu, on the 15th day of the first day, it means that it can dodge the first day and the 15th day. I never thought that the one who could not hide most seemed to be Chen Pingan himself. Going out for a long trip again to the Great Wall of Jianqi to send swords to Ningyao, with invigorating charms posted on his legs and feet. Chen Pingan asked, is that morning? Dao Ancestor shook his head and said, that would be too small to look down upon Qingtong Tianjin's methods. You asked for this one yourself. Chen Pingan breathed a sigh of relief and asked bluntly, dare to ask Dao Ancestor, can this matter be solved and I am still me? Dao Zhu smiled and said, I ask for more blessings. Chen Pingan was dumb. Dao Zhu was probably worried that Chen Pingan was going to go wrong. It was really a good idea, but it was spreading in the world more and more away from the original meaning, so Dao Zhu then added a word, blessed are those who ask for themselves. Chen Pingan asked, if Li Lu or Ma Kuxuan saw those words, whose handwriting would it be? Chen Pingan has always mistakenly believed that those words were written by Li Lu or Ma Kuxuan. Dao Zhu shook his head and said, not necessarily. What Li Lu sees may be Dong Shuijing who seems to be collecting debts for others, or Lin Shui who is Dao Xan Shui. What Ma Kuxuan saw may be the fire Ruanxiu, or Li Lu the of water. What Gukan sees may be Song Jisin or the finishing touch Xiaoyu. What Ruanxiu sees, it may be the handwritings of Chen Pingan or Lu Xianying in an Iping Lane. Only one thing can be certain no matter who sees it. It's not my own handwriting. Dao Zhu smiled and said, when you recognize something in your mind, you will continue to find reasons and arguments to support your understanding. Kiln workers, butchers, wokers, carpenters, woodcutters find firewood, and fishermen find fish because of their skill. Each is different, so when you look at the same world, each will have its own focus. Chen Pingan frowned and asked tentatively, those words are similar to the town of Red Candle? It's like a confluence of a long river of time. So anyone can be and no one can engrave? Daozu answered the question. The reason why Qingtong Tianjun set up this prohibition is so that you young people will not be too overworked on the road of spiritual practice in the future. Of course they are even more worried. After being broken in the Liju cave and taking root, you will lose one. The barrier that cuts off the secrets of heaven, the younger generation travels out one after another, and they will reveal clues about that one prematurely. Regarding the direction of the long river of time, it is not a small taboo, and the cultivator has to explore it by himself. Daozu smiled and said, Now can you answer the previous question? Qin Pingan turned his head subconsciously and glanced at the direction of Mud Bottle Alley. Walking from the alley to the drugstore, if you have money to buy medicine, snowy weather, muddy roads, you will walk lightly and there is no money in your pocket. The same journey, even if the spring flowers bloom all the way, will make people stagger and tired. Why is it so? The state of mind dictates. Law is not alone, but rises according to circumstances. Traveling through mountains and rivers, but not procrastinating, this is what Buddhism calls the mind and the trouble. What's more, his own husband also specially commented on the phrase, the human heart is in danger, but the Taoist heart is weak. When I was young, I was asked the most about the burning of porcelain. It was nothing more than 2 words. The direction of the heart, the direction of the hand. Qin Pingan said, You don't have to go shopping alone just to find a coin on the ground, and you don't have to wait for other houses to open the door. I don't think it is hard. Daozu smiled and asked, Have you picked up money? Qin Pingan said with a face, I really picked up a few of them. In the night when helping people to grab water, a child was lying on a field ridge, with Erlang's legs upturned, chewing on the roots of the grass. The star was shining above his head. The child held up a copper coin he had picked up on the ground during the day. Daozu raised his hand, pointed to his head, and then pointed to his heart. A person's rationality is the accumulation of knowledge accumulated by the day after tomorrow, and the roads that we have opened up by ourselves. Our sensibility is born and set. The heart is the official of the monarch and the gods come out. It is a pity that people are tired of things and the heart is a form of service. Therefore, practicing cultivation, saying 1,000 ways in 10,000, will not be able to get around a word of the heart. Qin Pingan, may I ask the purpose of all the techniques in the world? Qin Pingan thought about it briefly and replied, It can be falsified and it can be corrected. Daozu asked again, Where is the Tao? Qin Pingan replied, It can make people fascinated, unite with the world and everything and stay away from upside-down dreams. Dao Ancestor nodded, seeming to be satisfied with Qin Pingan's answer with a look of emotion. Hundreds of flowers bloom, thousands of people are competing, the earliest human sages who changed heaven and earth, in those long years that are difficult to describe in words, whether it's cultivating mountain climbing or learning, it is a very beautiful time. Daozu stood up and said, Follow me to the Mud Bottle Alley. Qin Pingan got up and walked out of the backyard with Daozu. Sudian and Shi Lingshan in the front yard of the drugstore were completely unaware. Stepping out of the threshold, Daozu looked towards the street and said with a smile, Qi Jingchun traveled to the Little Lotus Cave in the past. Before picking the lotus, he said to me that the purpose of practice lies in knowing, and the joy of seeking Tao lies in the unknown. Good guy, teach me how to practice. Qin Pingan smiled knowingly. Daozu suddenly joked, You are not bad as a junior. You didn't practice boxing and sword in your early years, so you dare to let me give way. Qin Pingan smiled and said, I was young and ignorant and said something offensive, Daozu forgive me. Isn't it true? The Lord of Luapa Mountain treats people with sincerity, and he is not afraid of shadows. Then it's okay. Ask your conscience at night and talk to your heart. You can't be scared by your own shadow when you walk alone. Walking on the street together, Daozu asked casually, What kind of knowledge are you studying recently? For Dao Ancestor, it seems that you can know everything. If you want to know, then you don't need to know. If you don't want to know, it's probably a kind of freedom. Qin Pingan replied, I read some Taoist Fa and Fuda Luwen. Before I came, I planned to go to the Qingtianjian and borrow some books. The Saint of Rights reminded one thing in the capital, that the opportunity for the proof lies in the words. Now, are you planning to travel the Qingming world? People without thought, he must worry about. Qin Pingan was worried about being careless. He was slapped to death by Yujing's second head teacher when he just showed his head in Qingming world. It's just that in the presence of Taoist Ancestor, it is hard to tell the right and wrong of his direct disciple. Do you have any experience in reading? It was said in the Book of Pills that Luwen is a character derived from Dao Qi, so I plan to choose more Kuelong, gluttonous and cloud seal patterns to read. Dao Zhu hummed, reading it makes people fly over. Qin Pingan was puzzled, didn't he see? Instead of reading? How to pronounce Falu pattern. Dao Zhu turned his head and smiled. Just now in the drugstore, you know that you are the one, you cannot worry at the moment. It can also be explained as your own Dao heart is stable, plus the gift of Lu Qin Daofa. It's just why there is no fear after a little bit. You don't worry that it is due to pure divinity. And don't forget that the road of martial arts today is the old way of Shinto. Qin Pingan's eyes were bright, looking at the far side of the street, the thoughts of a 14th level monk, directly manifesting the main road, and there was a light rain on the street. Walking in it? Then keep your feet on the ground, go and try. Try it. Dao Zhu smiled. He looks a lot like that stubborn fellow Qin Qingdu, no wonder he fell in love with him because of the disparity of generation. Very sword repair. Qin Pingan turned his head and looked back at the medicine shop. After that, the two of them walked towards the alley of mud bottles together, and Dao Zhu narrated some old yellow calendars that Bai Yujing would not record. Someone used to go upstream along that long river of time in order to find their true face, tracing their origins but to no avail. Someone worked tirelessly trying to find two identical flowers between heaven and earth. For a long time. The time of a world stagnated for a long time. The Dao Fa finally couldn't support it and the world collapsed. This person finally said with a smile, Xuanhuan Daoshi is dead. Someone wanders far away with the sword, opening up the world looking for an answer. Who is there in the world and what is the sky in the world? Guess what? How do you open up the world? Qin Pingan immediately remembered the meeting of his senior brother Cui Yang at the Great Wall of Jianghu. He slapped his arm on his arm and replied, I used the technique of turning the mustard seeds upside down and walking toward the small world, asking for self-certification? Dao Zhu didn't give an answer and changed the subject. Don't teach outsiders, don't set up words. Words are not words too. So some people break the word barriers and set a millennium period, chaos, and a sea of divine consciousness. It's so dark. Someone wants to explore something. Before the ancient gods, there was something that created the gods. So there are people wondering again. Is the long river of time a straight line that comes and goes without a trace, or an endless circle, or is it composed of countless uncut points? Could it be an ancient god? Once created spirit beings, and finally handed over to the human race to create gods in the future? Qin Pingan was silent, but it was inevitable that he was curious about whether this Taoist ancestor had ever successfully visited the border, and what did he see? What is the so-called Tao? Dao Zhu smiled and said, You almost got accepted by Lu Chen's generation master and became my closed disciple. Lu Chen was obviously farther than you thought. He went to Bai Yujing, got a bird in a cage and closed the door and he became more worthy of the name. Qin Pingan was stunned. But on Bai Yujing's side it seems that I have said more about it. Even in the presence of the most holy master, I still have to say, if you become my closed disciple, wherever it takes such hard work, just mind. Bai Yujing Shinsai sits alone, practices the avenue, and becomes the four masters at least 10,000 years worry-free. Listen, you, the most holy master, are really not surprising at all, and another three-character sutra popped up. Qin Pingan pretended not to hear the three words in his ears. The most sacred master who never wanted to study heaven and human, is still a man of temperament. Dao ancestor seemed to be talking to the most sacred master and said with a smile, the old master rolls up his sleeves for someone to show. If I remember correctly, the saber in the early years was taken to the wild world by a proud student. Qin Pingan's mind moved slightly. Among the 72 sages of the earliest Confucian temple, 2 of them made Qin Pingan most curious, because the sages were highly knowledgeable, and it is not uncommon to be a direct disciple of the most holy master, but one is famous for earning money. The other one is not an ordinary fight. It's just that in the later history of the Confucian temple, these 2 seem to have retired early and disappeared. They did not create a context in the Howran world, nor did they follow the saints of rites to the world, but even if they were very curious, Mr. Qin Pinganzai over there, I still didn't ask the inside story. Dao Zhu smiled and explained to Qin Pingan, if a group of fierce attacks are everywhere, there must be a victory. The Confucian temple still has some back end. Dao Zhu suddenly asked, would you like to see me? Qin Pingan was about to decline the matter, but in an instant, it was as if he had already seen a picture of a landscape far in the sky. In the wild world, a remote place with thin and almost no spiritual energy, there are 2 adjacent huts, and there is a tall and burly man with a big beard and a right gusset. The man with a strong mountain breath is chopping wood with a hatchet. There is also a thin, tall young man full of books with his hands folded, looking at the cat named Linu on the hut. He just jumped off a tree and walked away with a cicada. It's just that this cat was left by his old friend in his early years, and he just helped to look after it. The man chopping wood asked, "How do you say?" The young man nodded and said, "The old poems have been sorted out almost, and 3,000 pieces have been prepared for a while. You can go out." The man smiled and said, 3,000 songs, so many? That level must be uneven. Fortunately, it is in the barbarian land and there are few people who know the goods. Otherwise you will not have the face to register yourself. You will lose face in the wild world. Only one. The young man smiled and said, "The only one? With Aliang at the bottom, what am I afraid of?" The burly man laughed dumbly, put down his hatchet, clapped his hands, went to a cloak mound behind the hut, and found a broken iron sword, a high crown, a broken rope, and a Confucian shirt. The man stretched out his hand to wipe the dust off the ancient crown and put it on his head, not forgetting to retassel. Wearing a Confucian shirt and a long sword hanging from his waist, the man is still big-bearded, but his momentum is different. There was an old saying in Howran that the death of a gentleman is inevitable. The young man walked into the hut and took a long sword from the wall. There was an oil lamp on the table. Howran, someone in the world once was drunk with a lamp and watched a sword. When this young scholar holds a long sword, it is like the world's sharp edge, 3 feet together. On this side of the town, the two sides passed by the old locust tree ruins. Dao ancestor said slowly, Guess, has the old locust wood sword box, the old sword fairy returned it to you?" Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "Can't guess." Daozu smiled and said, "I have a chance to know in the future." Qin Pingan asked, "Is the old Guanju nearby?" Taoist ancestor nodded and said, "I was drinking tea and melon seeds at the gate of your mountain. Before going to Luapa Mountain, I was slapped with horns by Taoist Jingqing on the side of the small town. He also said that the grass on the hills of your house is lush." Qin Pingan stretched out his fingers and rubbed his eyebrows. He was really an uncle. When he walked to the small alley, Daozu stopped, looked at the small alley in front of him, smiled and said, "My first disciple, the only disciple who personally collects money, once had a fable saying that he was worried about the world, but Luchin said that he was worried about the world. Is the great wisdom, so Luchin has always been afraid of a certain saying, the so-called eternal leisure, is that the person who was dreamed of wakes up in the dream, and then the world will return at that moment." Bai Yujing also has a Taoist person thought it's very interesting. "I'm afraid that his master is like a buzzing mosquito. Even if he gets rid of the of heaven and is discovered, it's just a slap." There is another person in Bai Yujing. On the contrary, I think one of the so-called transcendence avenues in countless heaven and earth is just an extra red dot on our arm, which breaks with a flick of his finger. Your brother Cui Huang had already thought of this. Generally speaking, it is the one of Luchin. The idea is relatively unsolvable. If you come to Bai Yujing as a guest in the future, you can talk to him in detail. Daozu said, "Just walk here." Qin Pingan made an effort. Daozu smiled and returned to Daomen Chief Inspector. In the next moment, Qin Pingan returned to Dali capital. After thinking about it, he went to Qin Tianjian. Inside a room of the Dali Qin Tianjian, someone was burning incense and the fairy mist curled up. An outsider who just lived in the Qin Tianjian with a young face and surnamed Yuan, has helped a lot in the Taisha Bureau over the years. Because he is proficient in the latitude and longitude, moon phases, concocting techniques and secret rate, he has perfected the Qin Tianjian breath difference and fading method. It was this person who had placed a small incense burner in front of him, holding an incense chopstick and burning Gannan incense. It was just the supervisor and deputy supervisor of the Qintian supervisor who looked at each other face to face at this moment. The two old monks were still very leisurely and ridiculed a few words similar to the official debts often owed to books and burning incense to read Suzis words. Before Qin Pingan's shot at the inn in the capital, and then Ning Yao's sword, the movements were very loud, but they were not as shocking as the vision at that moment. The deputy supervisor asked in a low voice, "Master Supervisor, this hidden official, is it a hidden ascendant sword repairman?" Jian Zheng stretched out his palms, looked at the cracked ancient tortoise shell and sighed, "Your guess seems to be low." The supervisor suddenly slapped his knees with his palms, killing to death. It is absolutely unreasonable. Even if Qin Pingan is a Ascension Realm sword repair, the supervisor did not believe it. The Yupu Realm swordsman, who was in her early 40s, was already shocking enough. As for that Ning Yao, what did she do? Jian Zheng sighed, "No matter what the truth is, the situation is the current situation. The dragon is entrenched in Xiaotang, shaking his head and tail casually. For Dali capital, it is an unstoppable stormy sea. With force it's an idiot dreaming. How does it make sense? Haha, Wenxing's family lineage. The deputy supervisor said tentatively, then only moving emotions. Jianjing's mind was shaken. Qin Pingan really came. However, the old monk still looked complacent, pretending to nod it suddenly and said, I must report this to your majesty immediately, and there will be a deputy labor supervision officer who will treat the guests on his behalf. I remembered that the deputy supervisor was Xianxia Academy in the early years and said no. Those who are less conscientious and express affection are the most appropriate. Apart from anything else, Qin Pingan is still a nostalgic person. You can tell him about affection and prescribe the right medicine for the case. The prisoner had a hard time saying that at the Changchun Palace, I was really badly hurt by the Queen Mother Dallas pit. Before Qin Pingan watched Jingyang Mountain, he lay on a wicker chair at the Gyunla Inn and rested. To take out the piece of natal porcelain, order him to use his palm to observe the mountains and rivers, and to observe Qin Pingan from a distance. The result is good. If you use the quack and lake argument, the two sides are considered to be a bridge. Finally, the supervisor and the deputy, the two old men looked at the young monk who was always silent. Mr. Yuan? The young monk smiled and said, I have come since I can't drive away, I just watched the changes. Anyway, the worst result is that the Qintianjian was demolished. Anyway, Day is rich now. A Qintian jail for Qin Pingan at the moment is like entering no one. Glancing at the plaque, observe the timing. Seeing good and bad things from the sky, the sage chooses it. Qin Tianjian's Qi trainers observe the celestial phenomena, calculate solar terms, establish zhengshua and compile calendars. They need to tell the emperor those signs of rise and fall. Heaven and earth have already placed the xiang there, like a book spread out, and everyone in the world can read it casually, and the monks can read it more diligently, and all the gains may be their own way and state. The xiang, in the sky, the xiang, in the radicals of the human character, the cultivation of the Tao and the attainment of the Tao, is probably the purpose of one's cultivation, and ultimately it seems to be as immortal as the sky and the earth. Qin Pingan stepped into a library full of multiple landscape restrictions, and he sighed in his heart. He deserves to be the third master of Baiyujing, who is, no one can beat, no one can beat. The truth cannot be simpler. Lu Qin is like all alone, alone in a complete world with no gaps in the avenue. Besides, all the people of the world live together in another world without hindrance, and the well water does not offend the river. I just don't know whether the sword repair of the 14th realm, with one sword, can cut through the barriers of the avenue. There are almost no practice secrets on the Renyuniyun Tower. Most of them are masterpieces handed down by the 3 religious scholars and 100 schools. That's why Qin Pingan wanted to come here to read. Because the realm is there, the book is turned extremely fast, the spiritual consciousness is slightly moved, and after reading a book in a flash, some ancient books that have made his mind move slightly, Qin Pingan takes down from the shelf and silently writes them down. Those key statements. Even the mountains are like mountains and the air comes out. Is it related to the 3-mountain talisman? The dragon is transformed into the snake and submerged in the dragon. Will there be such a fierce thing hidden by this secret technique in the wild world? All gods sweep the floor and burn incense? Is it related to ancient sacrifices? In the end, Qin Pingan took a few books, walked through the wall, put the books under his arm, and stood against the railing in a blue shirt. On the other side of the square, a group of monks from the Qintian supervisors gathered. They were not very old and they had a child's comb horn bun, dressed in green clothes, and their style was simple. In addition, there are also Yudu Zhushi, Xichinshi, and young girls with different clothes. A group of people are on the steps, standing or sitting, standing and sitting, but no one is lazy. After all, the Qintian supervisor still has strict rules. What they talked about the most was, of course, the arena competition between Yuhong and Zhou Haijing. Then there are some experiences of landscapes that go out to experience, and it is not easy for Qintianjian's gas trainers to go out, so every time you travel, the journey to the landscape will not be short, and you will often walk around half of Aquarius Island, and your whereabouts are secret. Every time they travel far, there will be 2 groups of people secretly guarding the road, the Ministry of Penalty of the Great Li and the monks who accompanied the army from all over the country, so there is no room for mistakes. The Qin Tianjian's Qi watching technique is rare, not worse than sword repair. Qin Pingan was hesitating whether to return to the town and go to Yang's shop to read the letter, or go to the inn to find Pei Qian and Chao Sunny, or go to the ferry to meet the 2 nephews, or go to the palace directly. Looking at the generally carefree teenagers and girls, Qin Pingan had to sigh, lush years, when the most lovely. Qingtian supervisor is divided into astronomy department, geography department, omission department, calendar department, 5 elements department and sacrifice department. The Taisher Bureau, the Arithmetic Bureau and the Construction Bureau have recently established the Boundary Bureau, the Shanda Bureau and the Dialect Bureau. In addition, there are also some Qingshui Yamen in the Bell and Drum Academy and the Indian calendar. Among them the calendar is carved, also called lintai. The newly established Boundary Bureau is responsible for managing the yellow scale albums of the dynasties for the royal family. As for the Dialect Bureau, the Izhou dialect was compiled by the Ministry of Rites, and the minister Zhao Yao specifically abbot the matter, and finally deposited it in the Qin Tianjian. This is a huge expense involving immortal money, and the Ministry of Household has not cursed his mother. Because Zhao Yu had worked as a clerk in the Ministry of Household for a few days, he described this high-ranking servant of the Ministry of Rites as a man who sold yeti and spendthrift. The gangsters of the Ministry of War can't afford to provoke them. Zhao Yu, an official of the Ministry of Rites, arguing and arguing don't matter, and fighting can be insulting. Inside the Qingtian supervisor, there is also a distinction between superior and inferior. Those who look at the sky and despise those who look down on the earth. Those who look down on the earth will only follow the steps and follow the old rituals and sacrifices. The priests look down on those who guard the omissions. The aloof calendar department, the Lingtai Lang who was born in Lintai and studied the calendar, has the most precious status and no one looks down on it. Qin Pingan looked around. That one, the bird in the cage. Qin Pingan quietly raised his right hand and touched his left wrist. Long travel and return travel, time flies, spring goes and autumn comes, thinking and thinking, white horses pass the gap, walk around and watch flowers. What really made Qin Pingan hesitate the most was another trip by himself. Are you rushing to that battlefield or fucking straight to Toyue Mountain? Qin Pingan turned his head, and because he didn't intentionally hide his trace, he came to the door. It is Deputy Ma Jian and an outsider named Yuan Tianfeng in Qin Tianjian. Yuan Tianfeng saw this young hidden official at close range, and he was full of emotion in his heart. Is it really a legendary 14th realm great monk? Qin Pingan clasped his fists and smiled. Luopashan Qin Pingan has met Ma Jianqing, Mr. Yuan. It is inappropriate to call the deputy supervisor. However, Qin Pingan put more thoughts on the young monk who was fresh. Regarding the Jingqing Qingtian supervisor, Shui Dongshan specifically mentioned this unnamed Mr. Yuan in the Dali dynasty. He gave a very high evaluation, refreshing, cheerful, full of spirit, and amazing. In the words of Pei Qian when he was a child, it was to let the big white goose boast good people, that is, Sister Nuanshu sleeps in, the sun comes out from the west and the dog vomits ivory. Deputy Ma Jian responded, I have seen Mr. Chen. About Mo is to imply that Qin Pingan is not a hermit now, and when he returns to his hometown, he is a scholar in the line of Wenxing. Yuan Tianfeng called Qin Pingan as Qin Shanju. Deputy Ma Jian glanced at the books under Qin Ping's arm, but didn't say anything. A good one comes uninvited, takes without telling and leaves without saying goodbye. Fortunately, those few books are not too expensive. Besides, among the rare books collected in the Qin Tianjian, there are 2 flavors and charms condensed by cultural movement, which are dedicated to helping pass on. What's more, the banned books that were really secreted by the Qingtian prison are not kept in the library. Even if it was him, the deputy supervisor, who wanted to check, he had to nod and agree to the other 2. Any book he turned over would be recorded. With Chen Ping's current realm and Taoism that seems to fall from the sky, it is actually not difficult to find traces of the formation. Even taking a book and going back and forth, it is destined to be unknown. Yuan Tianfeng smiled and asked, Lord Qinshan, do you believe me? Qin Pingan nodded and smiled without hesitation. Of course I believe. Yuan Tianfeng suddenly painted a circle with a whisk in his hand, and then used the whisk to split it in the middle. So? Qin Pingan shook his head, raised his hand and put his fingers together. It was also drawing a circle, but it was not fully connected, and then it seemed to deviate slightly, except that the line did not extend. Yuan Tianfeng nodded. The vice supervisor on the side stroked his beard and smiled. As for whether I understand or not, you 2 can guess. Qin Pingan asked in his heart. Mr. Yuan is studying how to deal with the Wuxian demon? Yuan Tianfeng did not deny the matter but said helplessly, it is as difficult as climbing the sky to fight against the sea. Yuan Tianfeng seemed to be a little bit late and didn't ask until this moment, Master Qinshan has heard of me? Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Senior brother values Mr. Yuan very much." Yuan Tianfeng didn't care too much but asked, "Master Qin is proficient in arithmetic?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "The more I look at it, the more headaches I get, but it's not bad to use it for luminescence." Yuan Tianfeng regretfully said, "In fact, there is one way to do it. It should be included in the Dali Imperial examination. The proportion is not small. I heard that Cui Guosher had this intention, but unfortunately it was not implemented in the end." Qin Pingan hesitated to speak but stopped. Yuan Tianfeng was puzzled. "Does Qin Shanju have objections? Or do you agree with me?" Qin Pingan hurriedly waved his hand and smiled. "Although I can't decide on the Imperial examination, I am definitely afraid to nod this head." Pulling out a book and tapping his head, Qin Pingan said, "If I really want to be included in the Imperial examination, I will definitely not be the only one who has a headache. It is even conceivable that the whole world of scholars scratching their heads and screaming at these arithmetic books." Yuan Tianfeng laughed. "This closed disciple of Wensheng's line is still very funny." Deputy Ma Jian sighed, "Okay outsiders, you can talk and laugh here." Qin Pingan left and his body disappeared in a flash. Yuan Tianfeng smiled and said, "Don't ask when to return the book?" Deputy Ma Jian smiled and didn't say anything. Qin Pingan appeared in the alley and found that Lu Lao was not there, so he chatted with Zhao Duanming for a few words, only to realize that Master Lu had stopped an old master before. On the side of Longyao in the small town, a middle-aged monk chanted silently like a spring breeze. In the wild world, several sword repairmen who traveled together, the man in the middle wearing a lotus crown said, "Go to Toyuem Mountain." Sword of Coming Chapter 855. In the wild world, for sword lights are like rainbows, cutting through the sky. Wherever the sword lights reach, the sea of clouds is broken everywhere. Qin Pingan wears a lotus crown on his head, a green silk robe and a knight sword. Ning Yao is wearing a golden robe and carrying a sword box. Qi Tingji and Lu Zhiyujian travel far. Lu Qin condensed his consciousness into a figure the size of a mustard seed, and took a petal of the lotus crown as a dojo. Sitting in it as if feeling a bit boring on the way, he jumped up and punched a set of punches. Qi Tingji laughed in his heart. "The hidden official seems to be taking care of our sword speed, otherwise it can be faster." The current Qin Pingan can be described as one of the best in the world, like a flat boat, under the long river of time, and the other three sword repairers need to wait on the water. Lu Ji was a little absent-minded, curled her lips. She was busy looking at the sword hidden in the sword box, each with inscriptions. The small sword box, it is probably a piece of white jade Jing treasure, with the magical power of the mustard seed Nesumi, making there are 8 long swords in the box, small and pocket-sized like flying swords. The names of the swords are Qiushui Yuma, Deliberate, Qiaoqiu, Nanming, Easy Blade, Centipede and Mountain Wood. The 8 ancient swords are full of sword spirit, and they all contain the true meaning of the Tao. It is no wonder that the third head of Bai Yujing took out this thing from the city head before, with a painful look on his face. It is probably the heirloom of Lu Chen's own Tao lineage. Lu Shen walked fancily, screaming, almost like a martial arts style, and asked curiously, "Mr. Lu, the boss sword fairy didn't help you arrange a retreat?" Logically speaking, with Chen Qingda's temperament that he is most unwilling to owe debts, Lu Ji, an outstanding female sword repairer from a foreign country, will certainly treat him very favorably. Looking at the sword box, Lu Ji said to Lu Shenqing, "I did find me and wanted me to go to Xinxiao City to practice swords, but didn't agree. Otherwise, the boss sword fairy will say hello to the Confucian temple, and when the battle of Nan Pasua is over, Lu Ji can rush to the Qingming world." Chen Qingdu actually persuaded Lu Ji twice, once to tell her not to give up, 2 deliberately to pursue the refining of the second natal flying sword Beidou, first entered the Ascension realm. For the second time, I hope that Lu Ji will travel to the Qingming world. For example, to find an anonymous guest in Bai Yujing, he will first refining 2 natal flying swords with peace of mind, breaking the realm and refining the sword correctly and so on. Circumstances: if you feel that Bai Yujing's practice is boring and there are too many rules, go to Daxuan Dugwan to ask Sun Huaizhong for help, and find a Taoist status casually. Lu Xin said, "Mr. Lu has not been able to break through the boundary for a long time. It is a pity that the boss Jiangxian's suggestion is very good. When I arrived at Bai Yujing, I and Brother Yu would definitely not restrain Mr. Lu. Why not agree?" Lu Ji gave a very Lu Ji answer, too lazy to run that far. At first, he didn't want the boss Jianxian to deal with the Confucian temple for himself. Besides, in the world under the blue sky, who is not familiar with the place of life, she has no shame to borrow money from others. In the Great Wall of Sword Chi, Lu Ji is a poor ghost who has never had spare money. As a great sword immortal, his salary and all the rewards for killing monsters on the battlefield are used to fill the bottomless pit of Feijin Beidu refining. Lu Xun heard her statement. Not only was it not unexpected, but took it for granted. He took another look at Lu Ji and couldn't help but look at her a few more times. He made up his mind to see if there was a chance to dig a wall in the future. Lu Ji really spent too much time and energy on the matter of sharpening the second natal flying sword Beidu. Although she is a great family, she just seems to have no feelings for her hometown and the world, and she never talks about it. As a result, many young sword repairmen at the Great Wall of Sword Chi always felt that Lu Ji was a local sword repairman. In fact, Lu Ji's natal flying sword, which had never appeared in the Great Wall of Sword Chi, was born in the hands of Nando, and Beidu was born to death. He also had a natural relationship with the Qingming world. After all, there is the Jade King group who really gathers Beidu. Statement. The 16 sword repairmen who traveled to the Qingming world with the Hanging Mountain back then were led by Yuaning old sword repair Xuanhuan. If Lu Ji is willing to nod his head, by the way, it would be good to have a response to the other 15 sword fairy embryos. It's just that Lu Ji didn't nod, so Qin gave up. With a woman who did not hesitate to exchange her life for the engraving on the head of the city, the future of the road is limitless. It seems useless. Even Lu Qin heard a gossip. Brother Yudo once privately let the big disciple who was upside down the mountain pass a message to Lu Ji and invited her to buy Yujing to be the lord of the first floor. It's a pity that I ate a closed door at Lu Ji's side, and the female champion from the knife room failed to meet Lu Ji in the end. Qin Pingan suddenly said, Lu Ji, you can actually put a name in the South China city where Lu Ji teaches you, and you can be a guest of honor. From now on, you will be half of your family, just like distant relatives who don't often stop by. Baiyujing's fifth city on the 12th floor, 3 master teachers each with 1 city, and the second city on the 12th floor, either affiliated to the third master or self-supporting Dao Vane. For example, the Verdant city is the land of Taoism of the Great Master, and the Nanhua city is a 3-square-meter land of Lu Shen. Qi Tingji echoed, I have no opinion. Since they are all half of their own family, then Lu Ji doesn't need to return the sword box. Ning Yao nodded and said, it's a good thing. Lu Shen categorically cut the railway line. Mr. Lu is willing to condescend to be the guest of South China City, and he is welcomed by the poor, but his brothers clearly settle the accounts. It is not difficult to borrow some of them. This joint trip has passed more than 100 dynasties, sects, and immortal forces in the wild world, but Qin Pingan's performance is only 2 words, restraint. Most of them looked down and took Ning Yao and the others in a glance without stopping. With a heart, the ancient well does not wave. Qin Pingan said, on the penultimate page of the Book of Pills, the 3-mountain talisman is recorded, but according to the book's records, in addition to the number of uses, this talisman seems to have a crucial limitation, and Master Lu can solve it. Lu Qin smiled and said, it's not difficult to decipher, it's a bit costly, of course you have to use a Baiyujing secret method as an extradition. Back then, the brothers preached for all Taoist officials in the Jade Emperor city, and Mr. Sanshan Jiuho hid it. After listening to it for 3 days and 2 nights, I was seen by my brother, and I consulted Mr. Sanshan Jiuho about some talismanic knowledge. At that time, the poor Tao was watching the excitement. Later, the senior brother created the Sanshan talisman. It's all in the eyes. This symbol is based on the technique of visualization to create 3 fairy crossings that resemble a mountain city, just like opening 3 doors between heaven and earth, located on the bank of the long river of time, forming a pattern of interdependence between mountains and waters. But according to the commentary of True Relics, the monks need to have walked through the 3 mountains by themselves. Otherwise, this 3-mountain talisman is too unreasonable. It will be a life-saving talisman that any upper 5-level cultivator dreams of. Of course, it can also be used to kill people and make money. Qin Pingan gave Lu Ji and Qi Tingji a general explanation of the use of the Sanshan talisman. In addition to being the most suitable for traveling far away, this talisman has a greater magical effect, but it is also a kind of nourishing soul. Holding a talisman to travel far away, the only requirement is to train a Qimon or a pure martial artist, and must withstand the rush of time. 3 times are the best. Once you abuse this talisman, it will attract the invisible victory of the world's mountain luck. Then, if you go out in the future, it is best to go around the mountain, otherwise once you get close to the mountain, there will be inexplicable disasters. For a gash trainer, this is naturally a move that does not pay for the gain. The world is not a mountain or a water, let alone a mountain is not a mountain? Lu Ji was surprised. There is such a good thing under the sky? Training a gas man to nourish the soul, the higher the level, the more difficult it is to get immediate results. Qin Pingan smiled and said, unfortunately, you have to use up 3 opportunities in one breath today. Lu Xun asked, is there an idea for the visualization of the 9 mountains? Qin Pingan nodded and said, I have seen a lot of wild hills during the discussion in the Summer Palace and the later Confucian Temple. Above the earth, another sect head force passed by, hurriedly opening several landscape formations, like a big enemy. Even if the 4 sword lights flashed by, they were already thousands of miles away in an instant, and the mountain guard of the sect still dared not to withdraw for a long time. Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment. Jiao Zhang only needs to give out 2 Sanshan talisman for now. The last 3 hills need to be chosen carefully and then be careful. In fact, from the moment he walked out of the Yang family drugstore, Qin Pingan began to plan this matter, but it was a pity that Dao Zhu stopped when he reached the nipping alley. At that moment, Qin Pingan had just figured out the 8 hills beyond Toyua Mountain. When it comes to covering the heavens, what could be better than staying with Dao Zhu? Dao's move must have a profound meaning. It is very likely that it is the last 3 mountain talisman that Qin Pingan has in mind, and the route has gone wrong. Lu Xun is relieved if each person has 3 mountain symbols, 9 hills. The 4 sword repairmen would need 36 rare runes in total. He, by Yujing's poorest city lord, couldn't make up so many Jiangjiang green urns. Ning Yao said, I have a few pieces of talisman. The talisman paper can be made at will, it doesn't have to be the kind of true green and green urn. Lu Qin categorically said, how can this be done? It is the most destructive thing to favor this kind of activity. The poor Dao has to beat the swollen face to fill the fat man once, even if the green urn is not enough, I must tear the book. Looking at Lu Qin's expense, Qin Pingan did not expose the careful thoughts of the 3-hand master. Ning Yao's use of this talisman meant that he had forged a small bond with South China City. This kind of incense relationship with the world's first person, let the green urn be precious, it is a bargain business. In the night boat, Wu Shuangjiang gave a few green urns. In Haoran and Qingming, if there is a Baiyujing 3-made Taoist who succeeds in becoming a heavenly monarch, they will burn this talisman and welcome their respected Baiyujing palm. Teach Patriarch. Lu Ji said, my few copies don't make do. How are they worth? Qi Tingji said slightly, I and Chief Lu can use the same paper. In the end, Lu Qin really took out all his belongings and found out more than 20 green urns. In addition, he also took out a book of Huang Tingjing lingering in purple and yellow. Lu Qin finally got up and pinched at the Lotus Dojo. Dao Ju, after reading some words, carefully tore off a few pages of the book as talisman paper, but the person who really started to draw the talisman still borrowed Qin Pingan, who is a Taoist. Lu Qin now only has his thoughts left. Lu Qin tentatively said, because none of us have ever walked through the 6 hills personally, so I need to separate my mind, enter your heart lake for a moment, and perform a Baiyujing secret evangelism method to help transform the false and the true, and use the false and the true. Lu Qin paused for a moment and asked with a smile, have you ever trusted the poor way? Of course, you can cut out a site with Jianxin in advance as a place for hospitality. Besides, the real guest is actually Qin Pingan. Attach to the tail and go. As a result, all 3 of Ning Yao looked at Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan nodded and the matter was settled. It was clear that none of the 3 of them believed in Lu Qin, but Qin Pingan's decision simultaneously understands. Qin Pingan instantly mastered the Baiyujing immortal art, and at the same time he split his mind to go to the heart lake of the 3 people in Ningyao to help shape the outline of the 6 mountain cities. The 3 people's hearts are full of swords and spirits, leaving only one place to keep the rest of the scene tightly isolated. Lu Qin is very disciplined, but just a glimpse of it makes him slap his tongue, especially Na Ningyao, with a little deduction. Knowing that her mind-to-heart world is a whole colorful world. After leaving Sangsanhu, Qin Pingan reminded, in each mountain city, you can stay at most for 1 stick of incense. This matter must be paid attention to and cannot be taken lightly. Then Qin Pingan smiled and asked, are there any taboos about respecting incense? As the old saying goes, it's easy to ask the gods to send them to the gods. The Sanshan talisman needs to return gifts and send the holy. Qi Tingji smiled and said, I have long admired Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, there is nothing to taboo. Lu Ji said, what's the matter here? Just burn a few incense sticks. Does not spend her money anyway. Lu Xun muttered, Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, no matter how good you are, you will have fun. Qin Pingan, Ning Yao, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji, burn incense to pay respect to the same person at the same time. Lu Xun asked, "Is there any mountain incense?" He is really scared of this hidden official at the moment. It is a pitfall to pit people. Fortunately, Qin Pingan smiled and twisted out a bamboo incense tube from his sleeve. He still took a few Pei Qian to visit the Hebo temple, and the temple gave gifts. A handful of mountain incense was distributed to the three of Ningyao, but when he handed it to Lu Ji, he smiled and said, "According to the rules, please ask for the money, you have to pay it yourself." Qi Tingji threw Qin Pingan and Lu Ji each with a grain of rain money. Lu Ji flicked his finger, and the grain of rain money fell into Qin Pin's sleeve. Qin Pingan took the lead in traveling far away with Fu. In the first mountain city, he twisted out 3 sticks of incense and lit the incense. Because he was left-handed, he held the incense in his right hand and held it in his left hand and held it high above his head. Lu Xun tooted, "It's very sincere to let you give up this little trick." After finishing the incense, Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Since you are sincere, you still have to believe." Ning and Yao were slower than Qin Pingan, and Qin Pingan stood there and waited for a while. Qin Pingan asked, "I heard that the city master Guo from the Baiyu Jingyu hub created a big amulet called Shijin? Since the relationship between Master Lu and Qingzhu Guo is so good, they have opened Guangqianjianzhai there. Presumably?" Lu Xun said bitterly, "Such a large talisman, one of a handful, is not comparable to a talisman paper like Kinggolf. Guojie, the lord of Yushu city, and Xiao Xiang, the deputy lord, are all well-deserved Taoist old swordsmen. In the words of Dao Chang, son of the great Xuandu Guan, there are 2 people in Baiyujing who understand swordsmanship. Of course, Yudo counts 1 and Guojie plus Xiao Xiang counts 1. Jade Hub has a sword-washing thing, and it is an ancient star with a great history. The sword-washing talisman is a big talisman that evolved during the process of tempering the flying sword." Lu Xun asked tentatively, "Still borrowed, right? Sure enough, if you talk too much you will lose. I would not mention Guangqianjianzhai if I knew it." Qin Pingan said, "Don't be nervous, let's buy them. If there are a few cards on Master Lu, we will buy a few." Lu Xun heaved a sigh of relief, "Only 3. In the end, Qi Tingji spent money to buy 3 Yushu city washing sword talisman, and all of them were given to Lu Ji so that she could hurry up refining and fortify the flying sword in Beidou Jianfeng. Lu Ji wanted to be polite with others. He held his mind and said to Qin Pingan, "Thank you. A sword box, 3 mountain charms and sword washing charms. You have to add the Ascended Realm Great Demon who crossed the sea to hunt down that alias border." If it was not necessary to join forces with Qin Chunan at that time, once Lu Ji fought his life and sacrificed his flying sword in Beidou, he might be able to engrave on the city. Qin Pingan smiled and shook his head. "Lu Xinshin feels sad, your kid is generous. I remember the boy in Mud Bottle Alley before. Not like that, it's more simple." Qin Pingan's figure dissipated and went to the next mountain city, and after burning incense to pay homage, this time without waiting for the 3 of Ning and Yao, he went straight to the 3rd mountain city. Lu Xun asked, "Why don't you visualize the Tuoyue mountain for the last 3 mountain talisman?" Qin Pingan said, "Even if it is already a boat that is not tied to it, you need to be careful to sail the boat for 10,000 years. Lu Xinshin agreed, "It makes sense and it is a good sign." The 3rd head teacher of Baiyujing suddenly smiled and said, "Qin Pingan, don't forget, any unintentional remarks you have at the moment are very important." Qin Pingan ignored him, just looking at the foreground. This mountain city is a hill with a stalemate, with bones and corpses piled up, black clouds are rolling and the mountains are full of bones. The world seems to be only black and white. This sect in the wild world, at the gate of the mountain, learn from the awe-inspiring fairy mansion. An archway building stands with the plaque, White Flower City. The doorkeeper was 2 corpses who were supposed to be sword repairers, and their deaths were miserable. One of them was pierced through the heart orifice by a long sword and firmly nailed to the stone pillar of the archway. A person knelt on the ground, leaned forward, leaned his sword on the ground, the hilt of the sword passed through the chin and penetrated the head. Are 2 ancestors of the Great Wall of Jianxi. Qin Pingan walked to a corpse, squatted down, pulled out the rusty long sword, put it in his sleeve, raised his palm and swiped it gently on the side of his head. A corpse suddenly dispersed like smoke and dust, and Qin Pingan took out an empty hip flask and put it in it. Then got up and walked to the other kneeling corpse. He lifted the ancestor to his body as if to help it, and then gave it a slight shock, and put it in another empty hip flask and then took the sword into the sleeve. The sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and there are very few people who do not like to drink. After doing all these things, Qin Pingan moved his sleeves with both hands. A fairy cultivator of the monster race arrived in the wind, and fell on the steps of the mountain gate. His face was uncertain. "Who is here? Leave your real name." Almost at the same time, a sect, more than 100 monks of the monster race appeared one after another, flocking to the mountain gate. Chen Pingon said indifferently, "The Great Wall of Sword Chi, the hidden official Chen Pingon." The fairyland was stunned at first and then burst into laughter. The laughter was like thunder and the bones fell in the mountains like clouds. "Where is the lunatic? What are you kidding?" A consecrated monk reminded him in his heart. "Sect master, this kid really looks like that hermit." It was just that soon a monk laughed and said, "Could it be the hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Chi who couldn't get along in the Howren world and ended up becoming a Taoist priest?" As a result, behind the sword-backed man wearing a Taoist crown, 3 more people appeared almost simultaneously. A handsome young man smiled and said, "What did you talk about, so funny?" Chen Pingon joked, "I said I knew old sword immortal Chi from the Great Wall of Sword Chi. This guy killed him and didn't believe me." The native sword repairs of the Great Wall of Sword Chi are no strangers to the Yayan Mandarin of the wild world. Almost everyone knows several kinds. Especially the sword repairer who needed to travel long distances frequently like Chou Miao. Qi Tingji nodded and said, "Then beat it to death and see if you believe it or not." Qi Tingji has only one natal flying sword, named Bingjia. When he was young he used to have a nickname and let him go. Like to help soldiers on the road. Qi Tingji Lu Ji Ning Yao. The sect master of the fairyland didn't say a word. He ran away first, and then there was a noisy bird and beast dispersal. Lu Ji narrowed his eyes and said, "I'll leave after I've enjoyed it here. I promise I won't use half incense." Qi Tingji said, "I am targeting those fish that slipped through the net." Chen Pingon nodded, "As long as you are within a half-scented incense, you won't delay business." After using the Sanshan talisman, this trip went to Tuoyua Mountain, which greatly reduced the distance and saved a lot of time. Chen Pingon left first and Ning Yao followed. The next mountain city is adjacent to the ruins of an ancient battlefield. This place is dark all year round with overbearing ghosts and gatherings of ghosts and demons. There are hundreds of thousands of Yin soldiers. Ghost Valley similar to the Bone Beach of Luzhou and Beiju. It's just that there is no suppression by the Faima sect. There are ruins of battlefields in the world, the suppression of Confucian academies, the land and water dojos set up by the vassal states of the major dynasties, and the experience of descending the mountain and the accumulation of merits by the genealogists, so there is very little climate. The wild world is not the case. Ning Yao said that he would play a sword here. Chen Pingon continued to travel to the next mountain city with the Fu. Any Ascension Realm swordsman who has no worries, once completely let go of his hands and feet to perform swordsmanship. The killing power can only be described in 4 words, which is unreasonable. Sure enough, within less than half of the incense, a wild sect completely broke the incense. Lu Ji stopped at the top of the mountain with a sword, calling his name directly, "Qi Tingji, I hope that the Dragon Elephant Sword sect and Luapa Mountain will be able to help each other in the future. Otherwise one day there will be a dispute between the 2 sides, I might help outsiders." Qi Tingji joked, "Chief Lu, there is a suspicion of turning his elbow outside." Lu Ji is not the kind of person who can hide his words. "Dong Sanging, Qin Shi, and you, if you can choose, I will definitely not follow you and become the founder of some sect in the Howren world. Because of the sword repairs of the 3 city heads, you are the most ambitious and the sword heart is the least pure. Since the first day I arrived at the Great Wall of Sword Chi, I am not willing to approach you. On the surface I am kind to everyone. Actually, I am unfamiliar with anyone. I believe you have seen this a long time ago." Qi Tingji nodded. I finally waited for these truthful words. If Lu Ji keeps silent and never voluntarily tells the matter, Qi Tingji does not think it is a good thing. People are in disagreement with each other, and there is a slight gap like a mountain and a river, insurmountable. Aliang once said that the words of the world are all bridges. This is true. Since I have said it, it doesn't matter whether it will hurt people or not. Lu Ji said straightforwardly, "People don't serve themselves and they are talking about people like you." Qi Tingji hesitated to speak but stopped laughing. Lu Ji frowned and said, "Wrong?" Qi Tingji explained, "The word way in this sentence should actually be pronounced twice, not to go. It is a real secret of practice. It warns future generations to cultivate morality, know oneself and seek truth." Among the engraved sword immortals, in fact, except for Dong Sanging, Qi Tingji and Qin Shi, they only said that their knowledge is more than enough to be a Confucian master in the world. As for sword repairs like Sun Jiyuan, just pick up an elegant and refined Qinglu celebrity. Lu Ji turned his head and said, "But you have changed a lot when you reached the Howran world." Qi Tingji smiled and said, "Be the suzerain of the founding faction. A mountain towering into the clouds. In ancient times there are vast clouds and waters, where do you know what? This place is like the fairyland in the book. It is full of aura and thick with flowing air and flowing water. Is an extremely famous mountain in the wild world. In the barren world there are also big dynasties, 5 mountains and even a great dynasty. Human race monks multiply and thrive, bustling human race, ghosts, mountain spirits and water descendants are mixed." Qin Pingan did not go to the Daiwa temple on the top of the mountain. He stood there and asked, "Can you figure out which monsters are stationed at Toiwa Mountain?" Lu Xun smiled and said, "Difficult. I can only say that the great pioneer disciple of the great ancestor of the wild will definitely be there. As for the new makeup of the Taoist name, it is more likely that he ran to talk to a Liang." Qin Pingan was silent. Lu Xun asked, "Still worried that the unexplained prophet, our group will be trapped in a mountain city? Or in a similar situation?" Qin Pingan nodded. Lu Xun wondered, "What are you doing here?" Qin Pingan looked up, "Just come here to take a look." Returning his gaze, Qin Pingan said, "I intend to give the authentic alchemy book to the Huangting Mountain of Taiping Mountain." Lu Xun knew from a single point, the material of the book itself is good. With more than 1,200 words, it is all refined. It can indeed support a Luotian Dajiao and use it as a mountain guard. It is just a gift from the seniors. What are you telling me about this? Besides, you don't lack this thing in the Luapa Mountain. What about the next sect? Taiping Mountain will definitely rebuild the sect in Tonggishao. After all, this book was given to me by Brother Li, so you turn around and say hello to me. If it is feasible, I will do it. Tonggishao Taiping Mountain's Taoist incense belongs to the family of Baiyujing de Zhangjiao. Oh, it really hasn't changed at all. He's still a good fortune boy. Okay, it's a small matter, it's on my body. In fact, with the temper of a big brother, you don't need to ask this. Qin Pingan's eyebrows were soft. Even if you are a close person, you still have to have the etiquette you should have. Lu Xun laughed. The big brother is still great. No matter where he goes, he is so popular. Lu Xun couldn't help but sighed. There is no place in life, but my hometown is nowhere. Everything in the world has its own belongings. We are all just pawnshop buddies. Qin Pingan said, "Let's go." The next mountain city is the Xinjia ferry crossing in the land of the great dynasty Jianghu. Qin Pingan's outfit is not too eye-catching. Qin Pingan said, "Come here to borrow a sword." The formation of the Taiping Mountain sword formation has been there for a long time, but there has been a lack of suitable long swords. Otherwise, based on Cui Dongshan's estimation, take a trip to the Hate Sword Mountain in Luzhou, Beiju, and purchase a complete set of sword imitations of acceptable rank. The sword requires about 800 grains of rain money. And the premise is that Heng Jianshan is willing to dig out half of the family, and he must come up with so many imitation swords. And the capital formation of this dynasty is a sword formation that completely abandons defense and only takes attack. Lu Xun was relieved and lent the sword box to Lu Ji, lending the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. There is still some possibility of getting it back. Lending to Luapa Mountain is not what meat buns and dogs are. Lu Xun smiled and said, "Borrow? Otherwise." Qin Pingan was puzzled. "You didn't talk about it before. It's not difficult to borrow if you borrow or repay. They only need to go to Luapa Mountain to ask for it in the future, and I will definitely return it." Lu Xun asked, "Do you do it now?" Qin Pingan lost consciousness for a moment with both hands sleeved. The gatekeeper Zheng Dafeng. First, she guarded the gate of the town and then guarded the gate of Luapa Mountain. This is the so-called Providence in the dark? Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment and said, "I once met someone on a mountain top." Lu Xun sighed, "Don't doubt it, he is the first ancestor of the military strategist with inconsistent merits and demerits. Fu Lu Street Li. Verdant City, also known as Jade Imperial City. Jade Emperor plums are really crisp. Confucian Li Shixing Taoist Zhou Li. So who is the third person?" Lu Xun asked. "Qin Pingan, you have been pursuing incorrect. Then have you ever thought about who can be infallible? Are you really a monk who has reached the sky every step of the way?" Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "It's a god." The old blind man and Qin Qinglu stood together by the cliff, one squatting and the other sitting, each drinking. 100,000 mountains is a large piece of land that the old blind man abruptly cut from the wild world. Qin Qinglu asked, "The great ancestor of Toiwa Mountain is only a little short of being able to enter the 15th realm. Except for the Battle of Toiwa Mountain that year, the 3 of Qin Qingdu injured the root of the avenue. There is a lack of these mountains. Doesn't matter? The old blind man raised his dry fingers and scratched his face. There is a fart. Phew. You can't fight me hard? Qin Qinglu smiled and said, desperately? Even if I win you, I won't be able to enter the 15th realm without spending a lot of time. The old blind man smiled hoarsely. That's right. Qin Qinglu asked, that is to make way for Zhou? The old blind man thought for a while. That's not enough, I guess it's the same as me, the aptitude for cultivation is not good, and the 15th realm is hard to ask for. Qin Qinglu raised his head and glanced at the sky. The old blind man said, there is nothing to see. The sky is hanging by the galaxy. Bone and thin the wood-like old man, wearing a purple robe, painted with black and white yin and yang patterns. The wine gourd hung on the waist is shining brightly, but the magnificent atmosphere that seems to gather a whole galaxy in the sky is much inferior compared to the peak period. There is an uninvited guest who can save the thoughts of the void and concentrate on the truth. It is as if the immortal rides on the chase, fights to the stars and crosses the Tianhe. The 18 heavenly beings of ancient and modern times cannot bypass the astrology. The young man glanced at Fulu Yuxuan, his face indifferent, and said, glorious and congratulatory. Yu Xian grinned and grinned. Saving Bai Yi he almost did not help, and he was too guilty to see people afterwards. I never thought that the Holy Master would come here to practice and own a piece of destiny, and I feel even more guilty. It is said that when the Confucian temple was discussing matters, there was no shame when the old man chatted with the great master Longhushan and the real person Huolong. Yu Xian took out a pot of Qingshan wine from his sleeve and raised it high. Come on a pot? The youth shook his head. Yu Xian took a sip of his drink and asked curiously, why do you, a respectable old man like you, mix with the affairs of Lizhu Dongtian? Refers to the burning of natal porcelain in Nalong Kiln. And this young and virtuous man was once the lord of the earth immortals, and he has the reputation of being the ancestor of all laws. One of the places where this person cultivated is called Laoshan. It is said to be located in the center of the sea. The gods can't move, the immortals are really unattainable and far away from the world. There are monuments, platforms, and streams on the mountain, the inscription Tai Ping Huan Yu Zhan Ji Nan. There is a deep stream under the refining stage called Imo Qian Jian. And that deep stream of water is the only standard money that has passed through several worlds before the three fairy money, Xiaoshu money, and Guyu money, which is the predecessor of gold fine copper money for later generations. The intention of this move was originally to completely divide and disperse the divinity, but later there was a lot of mistakes. After more than 1,000 years of continuous replacement, gathering and collection, it was converted to use the current three kinds of fairy money. The young man said, Qingtong Tianjun is my good friend. If you can ask for anything, please help. Yu Xian drank wine without commenting on these past events. Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, among his disciples, there is Qingjun who is located in Fangzhou Mountain. The status of the three mountains in the past was even higher than that of the 5 sacred mountains including Suishan. One of the key points of the attempt by the Saint of Rites that year was to invite this gentleman out of the mountain to formulate etiquette rules together. There are also 2 anonymous disciples, Taoist Wang Min from the same era as Bai Yi, and Jianxiu Luyu. Both of them are not well known when they are up and down the mountain in the world. All deeds are only circulated on the top of Haoran. One Feng Qi went to sea to visit the immortals, and the other Luyu rising and falling like a comet flying across the sky. This young man spent some time in the Lizhu cave in his early years. Fulu Street? Fulu Street. And that Jianxiu, an anonymous disciple, was born in Fulu Street. As for the peach blossoms in Taoyuexiang, he planted it himself. Of course he did it casually. Dali Dynasty's casting of gold, fine and copper coins was still the carving mother he gave. After the Lizhu cave fell to the ground, the Fulu Street Lu family, who was inextricably linked with the Lu dynasty, once secretly presented a few pages of ancient books to the then Queen Dali. One of the pages recorded a talisman, which seems to be of low rank and not very useful. At that time, Nanyan was on the side of Ni Ping Alley, and he used to learn now and personally performed the wall penetration technique. From Song Jisin's house to Qin Pinggan's ancestral home. The heaven and the earth are connected, the mountain walls are connected, soft as an apricot blossom and thin as a page. I point a sword, open the door quickly, and follow the law of Mr. Sanshan Jiuho. It's just that even the Queen Nanpin or the later Empress Mother Lu Jiang had never heard of the names of Sanshan and Jiuho, let alone know the routes of the Great Road. It is a pity that Nanzan failed to find out the truth after returning to the capital, so that for so many years she has not paid attention to this matter. If this talisman falls into the hands of people who know the goods, it will be Xianxia on the page alone. Treasure. Yu Xian sighed with emotion. A man and a god, riding across the galaxy and riding the sun and the moon, swimming beyond the 3 mountains for seas and 5 mountains, life and death remain the same. The young man shook his head and said, 10,000 years ago, the gods were still the masters of this world. It's easy to cross the galaxy and you don't need to ride the sun and the moon. Yu Xian turned his head and looked into the distance. That guy, are you staring at the two of us now? The young man did not follow Fu Lu Yuxuan's sight. Instead, he looked at the mountains and rivers of the wild world and said, it seems that he is not only planning to move mountains. A golden arch bridge. Even if a monk at the top of the ascending realm stands in it, there is no end in sight. Climb to the sky, of course, occupy the main position of the ancient Tianting ruins. Vulcan returned to his position, and his status was side by side. There was no difference between the two sides and they were equal. Lizhen, the new armored person. In the early years, the 3 sword repairmen who slashed Tuyueshan with their swords, Qin Kingdis natal flying sword Duckweed, was completely broken in Tuyueshan, and then the Great Wall of Hadao Jianqi was born. Long Jun's natal flying sword is named Daxu Xianzhong. As for the predecessor of Lizhen, Jianxiu observes his life, flying sword, and is named Time Changha. Newly promoted water god Rain 4, the master of the throne of the demon Fei Fei. Water Li Lu was stripped of the Dao deity by Huan Xiu, she threw it to Yusi casually. When he reached the sky, Zhoumi carried several blessed places with him. As for the cave sky in the wild world, it is meaningless here and will only be a burden. Those beings in the blessed land are not only the source of incense in the world, but also the source of candidates for many gods. The original sword repair was brilliant, but in fact, it was the best candidate to replace the sword bearer, which was the best candidate to replace the sword bearer. The priesthood was lower than the 5th highest of the ancient heavenly court, but higher than the 12th highest. After all, the sword bearer is still alive. But the piece of Tai Bai immortal sword presented by also selected Qin Pingan, Lu Kai, Zhao Yu, and the last one who was obviously a demon monk, is simply an unreasonable hand that Beta Sheng Zheng Juzhong can't play. Will definitely not be the arrangement of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. This is Howren's invisible suppression of Jiasheng. Zhoumi had no choice but to retreat, leaving Firen in the wild world and becoming the co-master of the world in one fell swoop. Not brilliant, so I had to choose beach. In addition, the dozens of sword repairmen who were brought here by Zhoumi were all Tuyueshan 100 sword immortals. They were also the reincarnations of the gods that Tuyueshan planned for 2,000 years. They were similar to Yusi and Tantan, although they were all occupied. There are different degrees of divine insufficiency in a seed of God, but these are just trivial matters, and they are all within careful calculations with very small errors. The biggest surprise was that Zhoumi discovered that his pure divinity was indeed not lacking, even 10% higher than expected. The crux of the problem is that Zhoumi only got nearly half of that one. The problem is this. The species is nearly half, infinitely close, but this difference is a world of difference. And even if Zhoumi used his backhand, but that one would rise with the tide, making Zhoumi still unable to pass halfway. Even if the current Zhoumi is already most of the realm of the celestial co-masters of the past years, it still has not been able to piece together a complete one. Makes him have to delay his return to the world. Therefore, the existence with the most complete divinity at the moment becomes the fire who is on the throne. The ancestors of the 3 teachings must continue to unite. After half of the time, the 3 worlds will be Taoized, and the speed of Taoization will become faster and faster. Either it is. I can only go out. In addition, many relatively young mountain monks nowadays do not know a secret matter. The first ancestor of the military family had a 10,000-year agreement with the ancestor of the Sanjiao. Before returning to the world, Zhoumi did not know why, allowing a small group of newly promoted high-ranking gods to retain part of their humanity. For example, Lizhen, and the 3 old friends of the Jiashan account, Yusi and Tan. In that battle that swept the 2 worlds, if a high-ranking fell on the battlefield, it would be a return home from a long-distance wandering for thousands of years. It was a kind of return, but it would lose varying degrees of pure divinity. The vastness of the old heaven is beyond the imagination of any mountain monk. Any high ranking is like a territory that occupies several worlds, but compared to his hometown, it looks deadly silent. I only talked about the distance between the 4 heavenly gates. It is possible that any cultivator of the Jade Purity realm can only swim from one gate to another in his entire life. In the narrow sense, the old Tianting site is like a capital of the human dynasty. Lizhen, Yusi, and Beach. Today the three people met at one end of the Golden Arch Bridge and walked slowly. Unanimously, each exhibited a blindfold, more like people. Relying on the retained humanity to be an individual, that kind of weird feeling, is probably a veritable involuntary. Once immortal, like the word freedom, becomes one of the most meaningless words. Tan murmured, while I can still feel regret. Yes, four expressions are indifferent. It's not easy to pretend to be an individual. From now on, you can easily manifest a new world and then separate a bit of divinity. That self is definitely more free than before, and you can make mistakes. Tan was full of anger, gritted his teeth and said, that self, or is it still himself? This one is not still looking at that one coldly. Is it silly to overlook 100 years, 1,000 years, or 10,000 years? What's the matter? Significance? When divinity completely covers human nature, there is no more joy, anger, sorrow, and joy. For these gods, they seem to have countless freedoms and countless possibilities, but the only unfreedom is not allowing themselves to be gods and not allowing themselves to destroy themselves. Li Jun seemed to be the most indifferent one. He hugged the back of his head with his hands and smiled and said, I really miss the years in the Great Wall of Jianghu. I have already copied it all the way down anyway, and I can often chat with Master Hermit. Lizhen continued, according to what Qin Shengdu and Long Jun said in their early years, if you become one of the 5 highest in the name, it seems that you can break the shackles a bit, and you don't need to be as boring as we are now. Tan's eyes lit up. Suddenly, the heavens and the earth brightened up, and a woman without the slightest emotion rang out abruptly, just a few of you trash? Shui Xinyu almost suffocated in an instant. Humanity was squeezed to the size of a dust, and he had to show a pair of golden eyes. His golden body was as big as a star. Tan is also in a similar situation, but the avenue suppression is not as exaggerated as you see is now enduring. The distance is relatively better and it can keep the body as it is. Li Zhen's hippie smiled and said, see you, this is a once-in-lifetime opportunity to provoke a few words to our girl, Ruan, and maybe be beaten to death. At any rate, she can get a moment of relief, and then she will be put together again by Zhoumi God, known as the Sleepless. Careful, intentionally or unintentionally, let them maintain a little humanity, just like a sleepy person in the world, but they have become insomniacs. But as long as all the residual humanity is wiped out and the divine nature is eaten up completely, naturally there will be no such pain. The so-called gods are like a chessboard, and every square has an emotion. Lift accurately, put back accurately. The higher the position, the bigger the chessboard, the more squares. The problem is that every single or multiple emotional ups and downs, overlaps, and blends are not aimless and unable to do whatever one wants, because they are orderly and always have a clear purpose. Moreover, the total number of black and white pawns is always in an absolute position of half and half. If we say that human nature is a natural prison given to the human race by the gods, such absolute and pure freedom is a bigger cage. And this is just the view of the human race. The gods do not know it, or to be precise, the gods will never know it. Finally, whether it is a human or a god, freedom seems to be a cage. A person who is not a sage can have no fault. Knowing wrong can improve the great yen. Will make mistakes but can also correct them, which is a kind of freedom. There is no better word that can comfort people's hearts more than this. A woman who no longer has a ponytail stands on the railing in the center of the Golden Arch Bridge. With a wave of her hand, she dragged the towering golden water Yusi into a round of sun, and killed it with fire. A 14th level cultivator Yusi facing her existence, there was no way to fight back. Zhoumi appeared here but did not stop her wanton action. Anyway, the divinity of the water is still here, there is no trace of omission, he will have a big deal to put it together again. Looking down on the railing carefully, overlooking several worlds, smiled and said, who would have thought that I would miss that one just a few steps away from the city? Unfortunately, I couldn't become that one. Nowadays, many places can't be touched by careful sight. But she who is standing on the railing has no restrictions on this road, because all the sunlight can reach is the territory under her jurisdiction. She never said a word. A pair of golden eyes, long golden hair, and a golden robe. Zhoumi knew that after reaching the sky, she looked all over the world, but did not look at that person alone. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.